I'm Peter from the Daily Rios.
I'm Eric from Longbox Review, and this is episode 40 of Peter and Eric's Legion Project podcast. Hello and welcome to the Legion Project podcast. I'm your host, Eric.
And I'm your host, Peter.
And we are here today, this episode, to discuss issue 40 of the third volume of the Legion of Superheroes. Just when the Legion thought they were rid of Starfinger, Peter, my very favorite Legion villain, he comes back and he's every bit as evil as before. Can you believe that?
I guess we'll find out.
Oh my God. I can't stand this guy. I can't stand this bill. I'm sorry. I'm jumping right ahead to initial thoughts, Peter. Starfinger is the worst. The worst.
Is he worse than the original?
Well, okay.
It's a serious question. I don't know. Do you think the original is worse, or do you think this version, Starfinger 2.0?
I mean, in one sense, yeah, the original is kind of worse.
Okay.
He's so ineffectual, and yet somehow had multiple appearances through Legion history and whatnot. But this guy is just I will get into this. I feel like a rant is coming on, but
Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this, Peter. So how you doing?
Good. Doing good. This should be an interesting conversation for sure.
Oh my God. And yeah, so we're going to talk about this issue, but I'm more excited because we're also going to be talking about the Amethyst miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
That which volume is this? This is the third
You could say, sure. Yeah.
But it's a 4-issue miniseries?
4-issue
Yeah.
miniseries, right?
Yeah. And of course we'll have some Who's Who entries.
Mm-hmm.
And oh damn, Peter, I forgot what was the thing I was supposed to mention.
Oh, we just wanted to say that we know that Legion of Superheroes movie is out there, the animated movie, right? Eric has a physical copy. I'm waiting for it to show up on the app, I assume, on the HBO Max app.
And have you heard when that will drop on there?
No, I haven't looked either, so I'm not sure.
I really hate this how they do things. I realize that they're just trying to sell units and whatnot, make you buy the movie digitally, right, and all that stuff. But good Lord,
Yeah.
just tell us when you're going to put it on this, so those of us who are paying for that streaming service can just know when we can watch it.
Right.
Although you did reveal that I went ahead and I broke down and bought the disc. I also wanted, since we're talking about this, I wanted to just shout out the people that tagged us when the movie first dropped, to be able to watch in whatever fashion they deemed necessary, the publisher. that they tagged us and said, "Hey, it's out." I think they were just kind of asking, when are we going to watch it? Are you excited about it? That kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm excited to watch it. I really am. But it's just, we're gonna talk about issue 40, and then we're gonna talk about because this is the first part of 2, really.
Yeah.
Issue 41 next, obviously, and then we plan on doing a Tales episode about the movie. So
correct.
We will be getting to that hopefully soon.
Yeah. It's no slight to the movie. It's just
not at all.
No, not at all.
I will say though, because I got the disc, they have the special features, and I just wanted to pop it in just to, first of all, this is a me thing. Whenever I buy a disc now, I always pop it in just to see if it works, because there's been a few times where I've gotten something and it just doesn't work.
Sure.
Right. And so I didn't want to start watching the movie. So I opened up one of the special features, and it's one of those things that's like, here's the intro to the Legion. And and then I got spoiled on a plot point watching that stupid segment. So beware, people, beware.
Spoiler warning.
I'm feeling a little salty today, Peter. I don't know
Uh-oh.
what the deal is.
Uh-oh.
I'm, it's probably just the lack of sleep.
All right. So we are talking about books that shipped in August of 1987. And just to put our heads, in where we are within the DC universe, we have just come off of the Superman Superboy story. We had an annual based on the Legion of Substitute Heroes, but really this is the first issue that's going to bring us back into, quote unquote, for lack of a better phrase, the main narrative, the main continuity, and everything after the Superboy funeral. Polar Boy is now Legion leader, and there's probably some other things we'll touch on. So just to give a little context of where we are with this issue.
All right, I don't have anything else, Peter. Should
Okay.
we just dive into it?
Yeah. How about hitting us with your synopsis, and we'll
Yeah.
begin.
So this is issue number 40, What Starfinger Touches, dot, dot, dot. This is by Paul Levitz, Greg LaRocque, and Dan Jurgens, pencilers. I'm hoping we could talk about that a little bit. Mike DiCarlo and Arnstar, inkers, John Costanza letters, Carl Gafford colorist, and Karen Berger editor, with a cover by Steve Lytle. Okay, what happened in this issue? Well, Element Lad, Timberwolf, Starboy, Wildfire, and Dream Girl gather outside the Earth's polymer screen because of a dream she had of an impending attack. Despite Timberwolf doubting her premonition, a ship arrives and attempts to break through the screen. Physically, weirdly enough, in spite of Legionnaire's efforts, the ship is able to break through and lands in Africa. Polar Boy, meanwhile, has brought Dawnstar, Mon-El, and White Witch to his home planet of Thar, kind of like Thaw, to deal with Starfinger's extortion demands. Back on Earth, the Legionnaires deal with the invaders, who have a connection to, of course, Starfinger. In the Tharian mines, the Legionnaires deal with a cave-in. Elsewhere, Starfinger watches the Legionnaires, proclaiming that they are, quote, beginning to be a problem. Back at Legion HQ, Starboy catches up with Dream Girl. I meant to say catches up with Dream Girl, who tries to convince him to stay with the Legion, but he tells her he has to go back to Xanthu and that, quote, maybe it's better this way anyhow, as he walks away. As a dejected Dream Girl heads for the Legion entrance, she encounters Sunboy and Laurel Kent heading out on a date. Dream Girl has some harsh words for both of them before entering the clubhouse. Inside, Sensor Girl orders Shadowlass to raise the shields, which she does as an energy beam from space hits the building. Sensor Girl leads Wildfire, Sunboy, and Lightning Lass to investigate the source of the attack, while Element Lad orders Brainiac 5 to move the HQ to avoid that beam. In space, Legionnaires discover the source, a solar amplifier. Wildfire is about to blast it, but Sensor Girl stops him because she senses it is booby-trapped. Sunboy then adds his solar power to the device, overloading and destroying it. Starfinger again witnesses all of this and orders an alternate plan when Sensor Girl delivers a warning. No one does this to the Legion. No one. Enraged, Starfinger blasts the monitor with his ring and declares that the Legionnaires must be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Should I start with my general thoughts so you can
you probably
have
should.
the floor afterward? Okay.
Since I already preloaded all of this.
Here are my thoughts after my first read. The very first word I put is wonky. And then I thought, is Levitz relying too much on LaRocque to fill in the story gaps, and he just isn't able to get out of him what the story needs? Or is Levitz too nice to say anything to his artist about, hey, help me out, collaborate a little bit,
Interesting. Okay.
I don't think there's much evidence to that. I think there's stuff in this issue after the second read that I said to myself, there's lacking in the art, not necessarily in like the figure work, the even some of the storytelling is okay. Just trying to figure out sometimes what is going on And
Mm.
does the artwork match what the situation is trying to show, in the dialogue or in the plot? I think there's a gap. There's a real gap there. But I also think there's a lot that I think Paul Levitz is not doing well in this
Yeah.
issue.
That I see, and that was my first response too, is that the story seemed lacking.
Yeah,
And so I don't know if people have noticed, like, but to me, like the last few issues that we've discussed, as I do these synopses, and I try to generally do them, describe them scene by scene. There's a lot of back and forth in these scenes, and Levitz has done that, I think, pretty consistently through this run. But I don't know that it's coming across to me as a bit disjointed, and I think that's just there's something missing to the storytelling, and maybe it is that combination of what Levitz is trying to convey and what is being expressed via the art.
right. And I think some of it is, you know, it's nothing new to the book. I think what we're experiencing is there's a lack of depth to why we're cutting. What did we learn from one scene that we didn't already learn from the previous scene, as opposed to one scene building on
Mm-hmm.
what came before? That's what I think
Yes,
is really the issue here.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Let me finish here. So I said I didn't hate it. That was on the first read. On the second read, you can see how there is a sort of sense of escalation as the danger gets closer and closer to the Legion of Superheroes. You could almost even say it's spreading the Legion apart, but really Starfinger isn't that smart. And it's, one of my questions was, to start off a conversation to you, was, do we think Starfinger has a plan? What is that plan, or do we not? And I don't think I think we can answer that right now. I don't think there is. Um, and then my final thought, this was after reading it the second time. Without having read the second part, I'm not sure how else this two-parter could have opened, how this first part could have opened to get us to where we are going to get next issue, because I don't remember next issue. I don't even remember if I read the issue 41 at all.
Mm-hmm.
Some of this seems familiar, but in my mind, I'm like, I don't remember what happened. So I can't even kind of speculate on how else I would want this story to open, even though that's not how we discuss an issue usually, not right off the bat. You know what I mean? So that's my I feel like I'm a little bit in limbo. This is one of those rare times that I was like, ooh, I really want to read the second issue right away so I can understand
Mm.
how this first issue matters to the overall Starfinger story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with that, generally speaking, because I found this issue so lacking. I wanted to jump ahead to the next issue to see, does the resolution of this two-part story, how does it tie in with this, as you said, and does it somehow make up for or elevate in some way this opening segment?
Right, right. And does it validate some of the inconsistencies, or does it validate some of my thoughts about, I think we should be further along in the Starfinger story than what this issue gave, right?
Mm,
Because we already read issue 29,
right.
which was semi Starfinger related. We had several scenes that were kind of similar, like the satellite.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the characterization of the Starfinger character, his minions, like we've had. This is, it's not like it's retreading, but yet if it because now it's actually happening on Earth, which is different than before. So in that instance, it has moved a little forward, but
Mm.
I don't, so that's why it's like the second part might make me like this issue a little more, or it might not. We don't know.
Well, I mean, and that, uh, that's not a great premise to go from, because
Sure.
the issue doesn't stand alone. It doesn't stand on its own merits.
Mm.
So I think we're pretty well justified in our criticism of this issue so far. So yeah,
Yeah, and it's not a it doesn't make me think of the previous storyline, right? It's like it's a poor aftermath to the Superboy stuff, which was so
ah,
monumental in impact that there's so little mention of it in here that I'm disappointed in that aspect.
sure,
I get it on one level because they don't want to continue that because Superboy's gone, right? Like in the DC universe, we're not allowed to talk about him. But it's like, sure, you mentioned funeral. Do they even say Superboy's funeral? I probably, but I don't
no,
remember.
yeah,
No, see, that's what I mean. Like
it's
it's like frustrating, and I don't know if I can completely lay that at Levitt's because it could be a DC mandate, so
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. I kind of took that as this is his way of still addressing the history, but not in a direct way, so that he's complying with whatever editorial edict there is at that time.
Yeah, yeah. What other thoughts did you have?
Oh man. Okay, I will try not to bash Starfinger too much more. I already have. I it just okay. I see. I feel like that this is just a retread of issue 29 with a little bit a few more details,
Okay.
but none of the stuff makes sense to me. I think they're trying to show Starfinger as some sort of a dangerous gangster. He certainly has the infrastructure. He has his own personal, his own ability that his ring is. He's got power, but my God, he's an inept criminal. He just, to me, he just comes across as inept, like I said, inept and laughable.
Hmm.
It kind of reminds me of he's like a 30th century version of Trump or something. But um, and the only saving grace of this issue for me was the scenes with Dream Girl and Starboy. Um,
Mm.
and the end of it, where Sensor Girl issues that warning, is like,
Yeah.
and it was, but in the way that it was shown, it was it was so undercut by the way the scene was constructed, that I don't know, just for me it seemed like her declaration should have carried a lot more weight, given what, at least what I see, what are behind those words for that character in particular. And I don't know, the whole thing is just off for me.
Hmm. Given weight to us, the reader, or to Starfinger? Who did you mean when you say?
Us
Okay.
as readers of her history, especially in this volume of the Legion.
Yeah.
I just, she would take something like this very personally,
Hmm.
given what happened to her husband.
Sure. Sure.
So I'm and so I'm looking forward to the second part for the reasons that we already stated in terms of storytelling, but also these character moments as well, to see what, if anything, comes of this.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about the cover. Steve Lido cover. I think I can't imagine we have a bad thing to say about the cover. Oh,
Well,
wait. Oh, oh.
no, 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 no.
Okay.
I was gonna say, even despite the fact that there's, Starfinger, we see Starfinger's hand,
Hmm.
and the title is what Starfinger touches, and we see that on the cover too, and with the hand, the giant hand grasp, for a thematic cover. This is, I think this is pretty cool,
Yeah.
because he's grasping the Legionnaires forcefully. I love in particular. So where all the characters have these expressions on her face. You see Starboy, but all you really see is his eyes and his mouth, because
Hmm.
it's all dark in there. So I just, that kind of touch. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And
I
it's
this is probably the most dynamic image of the of the whole comic.
Yeah. And you have all the main players that are inside the book, which is good. You could you could say that this is reflecting the scene at the end of the book where the satellite is aiming
Mm,
for the headquarters, what Starfinger touches. Well, he's managed to touch the Legionnaires in their own home, like an attack on their own front, on their home front. So, you know, metaphorically or whatever, it kind of works on that level. Um, yeah, I mean it's good. It's a really good composition. I mean, to get a hand that big, to get your characters that small, the ring, the star ring is, it's not that it's like totally center, but it captures your eye, because
mm-hmm,
it's right. It's placed in a good place. There's movement. It looks like he's smacking that hand down. There's destruction to show you, to give you a base, right? To give your eyes something to connect to on the ground level, right? So it's not just floating in space.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a good cover. It's a really good cover. I like it.
Yeah.
Because we sort of vary between covers that are totally 100% quote unquote realistic, or at least realism, in terms of, nowhere in this issue is Starfinger a giant, so it's like you
Oh
don't
yeah,
you don't take
sure.
this literally, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then we get some covers that are Tyr hiding behind a wall ready to shoot Phantom Girl and Shrinking Violet, right? Like that could be just a panel in the book.
Right.
But then you get something like this, where it's also kind of cool too.
Yeah. And these are these are my favorite kind of covers where
Yeah,
it's suggesting something about the issue, but it's not depicting, like you say, it could be just a panel inside. So yeah.
right.
And I think Lytle is really good at this when he's allowed
Oh yeah,
to do it, or when he chooses to do it, either way.
yeah, yeah. It's just whatever in his mood, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's start with Starfinger, since he is the main dude, the big bad. Did you learn anything? I mean, I think there's stuff in this that we could pull away that if not, if it doesn't speak to his character, it at least speaks to the situation. What did you think of in terms of, like, okay, as compared to that issue 29, and knowing that this issue was coming up and that you were dreading it, was there anything that you were like, okay, well, at least we got that?
Well, I think at the very least, it illustrates how much of a mm, reach, I guess, Starfinger actually has
Mm-hmm.
in the criminal underworld, or whatever, however you want to express it. He seems to have consolidated a power base that is beyond his means,
Mm.
as as a character. What I put in my notes about this guy? So that final scene where we see him uh, declaring the Legion must be destroyed, right? It occurred after as I was taking my notes. It occurred to me what or who Starfinger reminds me of,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to Kylo Ren in the later Star Wars movies here.
Okay.
It's just he's a man child lashing out.
Mm.
I don't understand how this guy rose to the status that he has here, other than he's essentially just a bully, right? Because of his ring, he has power, and somehow he's maintained control of this organization. In fact, I don't think he built this, or my guess is he didn't build this organization. He took it over in some fashion,
Oh, interesting.
and for some reason these people are loyal to him. I mean, given the ship at the beginning filled with his minions, I'm not sure what the relationship is, but they are definitely aligned with Starfinger in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I said, so we get a like kind of like the breadth of his organization, if not the depth. And that surprised me a little bit.
Okay.
And that's I guess that's kind of caught the basis of my consternation with his character. Is like he seems to be portrayed as an effective boss, criminal boss, right? And yet his actions totally negate that to me. It's
Yeah,
like, how's this guy maintain power? It's
right.
crazy.
They seem petty. A lot of the actions they
Yes.
seem. He doesn't surround himself with smart people. You know, the what does he call the guy that the arranger?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when um they were talking about Thar, so he's part racket. He's like has a racket. He's a racketeer. He's an extortionist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
he decides to go to Thar, send his people to Thar, which is Polar Boy's homeworld, and say, "All right, I want 10% of all of your mining rewards. Mining this ore, and I guess the assumption is if you do that, we'll leave you alone." Right, so it's almost like a protection racket, but not really, because he's protecting them from himself, which I guess that's what that is. I don't know. And then the arranger says he didn't see the potential of a Legionnaire encounter on Thar. And I'm like, wait a minute. You went to Thar, who is the current Legion leader's homeworld, and you didn't think the Legionnaires were going to get involved? So part of me feels like his minions aren't really smart either, you know?
To that point, in that exact scene, the arranger's like, I'm afraid our program had not included the potential for interference, right? Shall I request assistance from operations?
Hmm.
So it almost seems like Starfinger is running a division in a much larger organization.
Hmm. Or its operations is sort of, maybe it's like another part of it, like
Right.
maybe it's a more offensive kind of part, instead of, because that was, the what was going on in Thar is like something they could do from afar, right? Like stuff was just blowing up because of a remote device. What was anybody even there? We don't know.
Yeah, and to go back to your original question about what I learned about that. So is it, yeah, in this same scene, Starfinger even says, so that is 16 incidents on 6 worlds in the last year, though in many the Legionnaires never realized I was even involved,
Right.
which of course made me want to go back and go back through the issues. I'm like, what was this one of those things? And so it made me think of, like, we've, I don't know, a few times now we've read of situations where the Legionnaires arrive to take care of some sort of um
Water plant
yeah
accidents. Yeah.
accident, right? So
Right.
yeah, so are all those kinds of things, was that Starfinger? And so anyway, so that was kind of neat. So that little bit gave me a bit of the depth of this
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
But again, this guy cannot run this kind of an organization. It just does not make sense to me. Does
Right.
something does not compute.
We had one of those scenes in the last Tales episode we did in the annual, where there
Mm-hmm.
was something to do with the something got plugged in some water system. Even all the way back, if you want to go all the way back to issue 14 with the where the new recruits came into it, there was some kind of some machine that broke down. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We've been looking at it as like, in this utopia, things are just old, because the narration often said, right, like it would say
Right.
this
Mm-hmm.
this system has been running since the 27th century or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, things are just breaking down. So now we have to go back and go, because I didn't do that. I wanted to do that and I didn't do that either. But okay, is Levitz a genius, or is he now just saying, oh wait, I could tie all these things
Yeah.
together,
Yeah. I
which is also good.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
and I suspect that's probably the
Right.
case. But okay. Again, that 16 incidents and 6 worlds thing, it's just, that implies at the very least that they were successful at clandestine operations.
Right.
And yet, in this issue, like you were saying, they go to Thar and they're basically just saying, I'm Starfinger, pay me money or else, on a Legionnaire's homeworld.
Yeah. That's not
Uh,
smart.
what? Yeah. Again.
He's not smart. And what's kind of frustrating is even though it's not brought up in the issue, there is a mystery to his identity, even though
Mm-hmm.
that is not explicitly stated in this issue at all. It's
Mm-hmm.
only because of what I know, and I assume what you know,
Yeah.
about the identity of who this man is. And again, that's why it's like, okay, does that come out next chapter? Because if it does, or if it doesn't come out next chapter, does it come out when he shows up later? Like, it has to circle back to that story,
Mm-hmm.
or that point, that plot point. But and it's hard to talk about it because it's not in the issue. So it's like I don't want to give listeners, like, it's not like that's in the issue. I'm just kind of extrapolating what's going to happen later because I know it. But it's frustrating that it's not in this issue at all.
Yeah. I and again, talking about things that are missing, that we're kind of used to. I feel like we would, if Levitz were on his game a little better, we
Ooh,
would be getting
strong words.
a little bit of those details of this character as a tantalizing feature to get us as readers guessing who is this guy. If there is a link to the Legion in some fashion,
Yeah,
then what is it? And we would, just like we just kind of like with the whole Great Darkness saga. It's like who are these characters? He's the characters that we first encountered in that story, and then who is the great, what's behind the great, all that great mystery building
yeah,
stuff. We're not getting that at all
yeah,
with this character. He just shows up in issue 29. He's a gangster. uh we're getting a few more details here, and we get another story out of him.
right.
And you just said a minute ago that he shows up later
Yeah,
after that. Oh God,
yes.
I'm so looking forward to that, Peter.
Yeah, yeah. But I think at least that one will wrap all this up. It'll give
The
us,
next issue or the later
well,
appearance?
next issue maybe because I haven't read it, but
Oh
the
yeah.
the one after that, whenever that is, that will, probably make some of this. It'll put this all in a new light.
Okay.
I think.
All right. Well, they could very well pull a rabbit out of the hat, and I'll be eating crow down the road, and I'll be fine with that. But
Yeah.
boy, right now, no.
I do like that his speech pattern is back, right? Where whenever he talks, he always usually starts it off with one declaration of
Mm.
his mood, dissatisfactory. Events on Thar are not proceeding on a timely basis. Or
He
then,
sorry,
go
he
ahead.
he he talks like a middle manager.
Yeah. Yes, sir. If I may make a suggestion, intolerable. Swiftly,
Yeah,
Um,
these uh short declarations. Yeah,
right.
I
Unacceptable.
I do like that bit of characterization. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like the guy from Princess Bride, right? Like the
Oh
the
yeah.
Sicilian, right? Like he's always like
Yes.
inconceivable.
Oh my God. I think you just cracked that one. That's probably the inspiration for this character.
And we should also make note that he had a bargain with Universo
Hmm.
that he would not attack Earth, I guess it was, right?
Yeah, Earth was off limits. At least that's
Yeah.
what I took from that. Yeah.
And now that's no longer, he's no longer bound by that. So,
Hmm.
you know, I guess that's why. Well, not only is that why he's attacking the Legionnaires, also because they're just interrupting his attacks. Maybe the first one is, right? The first attack on the polymer screen and the Earth. I assume that's what that was. That was
I,
a direct attack on Earth or I don't know what that was.
what? Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what the hell was that?
I don't know.
Why was that? I mean, and it's not like that through that ship, they are physically trying to bust through the screen. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what's the reason for this, right? So it could be a distraction, but we're
Hmm.
not shown that.
Hmm.
If it was supposed to be an attack, you would think there'd be easier ways to pull that off,
Hmm.
because we get another thing later with the solar amplifier. So why not just do that? Although that the ship breaking through the polymer screen, it does not appear that that was an attack on the Legion. So then, what the hell was the point?
Yeah.
Um, it was just a scene, an action scene to get things going that somehow connects to Starfleet. And this is again where I was like, the plotting of this is just not, it's just not good.
It's not tight. So the criminals say here, um, one of them, when they open up, when they crash down, this is page 11, and they open up and they say, Legionnaires, huh? We were warned about you. Okay, so then it was not a direct attack against the Legion, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go do something. The Legionnaires might intervene, right?
Well,
And then,
sorry, you just said go do something. I swear to God, that is exactly what Starfinger told them to do.
and then on 13, uh, Element Lad even says, we still don't know why they were trying to sneak onto Earth. You won't be so smug when you find out, Legionnaire. Starfinger's got plans for you, and catching us won't save you. So, was this, you talked about distraction. Did they do this so that they can put the satellite out in orbit, or that they could, does it connect to the big solar satellite in the last scene? But we're in the future. They got sensors for this kind of stuff, like
Yeah,
what was the purpose?
yeah.
um other than to have an action scene, other than to kick off the Starboy Dream
Mm-hmm.
Girl thing.
Mm-hmm.
um this is why I asked you, is there a plan? And if there is, what is it? Because it
Yeah, right.
seems like there's a plan. Oh,
It is. This suggests a plan that I don't think exists.
right. I mean, we're two smart podcasters and we can't figure it out. So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
and speaking of smart, Starfinger really just does surround himself with really smart people, right? With that guy, you won't be so smug.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got plans for you. Oh my God, this is, you know, I I was I when I first read this is like, okay, I have some problems with it. There's some nice things about it, like I said, and the more that we're talking about it, Peter, the more I'm not liking this issue.
I will say this: Starfinger has technology.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned this before, right? So he has this thing that with brute force can shatter through the polymer screen. He can attack Thar with remote control devices, however they got there. He has this giant solar satellite thing that we've seen before that either just materializes out of nowhere or just is able to just not be recognized or analyzed or whatever, like it just
Mm-hmm.
pops up out of nowhere. So um it all feels, it all does, it feels like the weapons like a gangster would use, like
Sure.
this was something that one of the letter writers said in issue 45 about this issue. They say they actually like the idea that Starfinger is just a creep, and he's not cosmic, and he's not world dominating. And I do actually agree with that. It is kind of nice to not have a universo, a time trapper, an infinite man, a dark side. We
Mm-hmm.
just have this guy that probably doesn't understand how much power he has, and that's why he is so, that's why it comes across in a frustrating way, because it's like maybe he doesn't have plans, maybe he just does. And not to excuse this issue, but I don't know.
Well, okay. It's funny because I had pulled that same quote from that letter
Yeah.
writer as well. Low down creep is what. Yeah, refreshing to see a villain like that. You know what? I totally agree with you guys on that. It's nice to see not a cosmic level or like with Universo, somebody who maybe that's why it just occurred to me. Maybe that's why we're getting this kind of a villain now, because we did just have that major storyline that was building up, over many issues. The mystery building behind the scenes, even though Universal was revealed to us pretty early on, but the
Hmm.
Legionnaires didn't know about it. EarthGov didn't know about it. And so now we get a different kind of villain. What is missing here is showing him as an effective gangster, and
Right. Do they
that's not
have to? Do they always have to be?
well. I
Isn't that sometimes their downfall?
Sure, but we're not getting that either. It's just
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Because we were shown in 29 that he rules out of fear, right? If somebody messes up, he kills them
mhm,
and then replaces them. That's not always an effective leadership quality either,
mhm.
because your minions could revolt. But that's why you got to get dumb minions like some of them seem.
Sure. That's exactly why I think he has. It's kind of like on that Star Trek Mirror Mirror episode. You advance by killing your boss. I kind of think that's what happened here.
Right.
He probably found the ring and then used it to elevate himself in this organization.
Okay. All right. A lot of unanswered questions. We may get them in the next issue. We may have to
Oh,
wait till that other issue comes
you
about.
know what? Now, on the reverse of this, I'm now looking forward to reading that next issue, just to find
Just I
out.
That's how I felt. Which is frustrating that like you said, it doesn't make for a good comic, because it's not like it's not we're not I'm not trying to say, "Ooh, I can't wait to that next issue." I'm like, I need that next issue because I don't know what this issue is. That's a different
Yeah.
criticism
Oh yeah.
altogether. Let's go back to the first attack, which will probably lead us into some other conversations.
Okay.
Um, I and this is where I think Levitz, where I put the put Levitz up, in the spotlight and kind of go, what are you doing here? Like, why can't Element Lad just turn the whole ship to gas? What's so special about this technology? And I know we got that with the satellite in 29 and later on, like, you can't just approach these things. There's sometimes booby traps. Like, is there something with this that Element like can't just turn the whole, but yet Timberwolf can tear it apart, right? Like, it's a small thing, but I feel like, um, was Levitz really using his Legionnaires to the best of
Mm,
their ability?
yeah, definitely not.
Yeah. And then how do they know that they are heavy worlders? What is a heavy worlder? How they make reference on page 11 and 12, like, I got these heavy worlders, blah 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 blah. And then Starboy's like, oh, they're not used to, let me give gravity more than they're used to. Let me see, no matter how great a gravity they're used to, my power can make them feel too heavy to move. Okay, heavy worlders, how do you know? Is it because they're bulky? Is this a Legion thing that I just am not aware of?
Well, and really, there's only one character of this quartet that is a big guy. The others are either moderate or even thin looking. So what?
Right.
Why does she make that leap?
I thought it was maybe, I thought, and again, this is not supported, and this is kind of what, I think this is a little bit of lack. If it is a Legionnaire thing, if it's a Legion, if it's a part of the Legion mythos, like to call certain races or certain characters heavy worlders might mean something, and I'm just not picking up on it because I haven't read
Mm,
every Legion comic. If that's that, okay, fine. Um, but what about it? Is it in their dialogue? Are they slow? Are they dumb? Does it go back to the thing that Starfinger always has dumb people? Are they expendable? What is it?
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. So those
yeah.
two things kind
That's
of
a
bothered me.
yeah. That's a weird. Yeah. I hadn't really picked up on that term. Um, Reading it through a couple times, but yeah, what is it just if it was just to explain that how the Legionnaires could take them on, but that'd be
Right.
one thing. But I mean, you got Timberwolf, you got Starboy, you got Element Lad.
Right.
You it seemed like actually just one of them could easily
I,
just take him down. So I don't know. It's odd. It's a very odd thing. Yeah, I think this is where there's another example of Levitz being a little sloppy. with things.
Or is it also, and this is why I put the thing about LaRoque, is Heavy Worlder a shorthand? Maybe Levitz described it in the script and it's just not coming
Mm.
across on the page well.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Because the thing
Yeah.
I liked about Thar, even though it's super subtle and I don't even know if it's an accident or not, when they go to Thar and they talk to that science police Kark, he's he's short, just like Polar Boy. And I thought, oh, are all Thar people short because they live underground? Are they supposed to be like dwarves or hobbits? Are they meant to be? Are they just meant to be short?
Mm.
Okay, visually, it's an accident, I think, but maybe it's purposeful. Maybe they were all supposed to be sort of stocky, short, you know.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Good observation.
so again, that this is me when I look at the artwork and I go, I think there's something lacking. Make it more definitive. Make it, if you're going to make these choices, you got to really make these choices. And again, I don't hate the artwork. I hate the missed opportunities more than anything.
Yeah. Normally, I usually find something in these issues that I feel like LaRoque excelled at,
Yeah,
and I really don't think that there's anything in here.
yeah,
I mean, there's a few nice panels of Dream Girl, um, you know, nicely executed, lovingly drawn, but
right.
that's about it.
Yeah. Speaking of Dream Girl, what did you make of several things? She's the one who apparently had a dream. We're kind of thrown right into the story in the first page
Mm-hmm.
because she had a dream that they were going to get attacked in this precise location in the polymer screen. Um, what are her true intentions of that dream, and also Timberwolf's reaction to her?
Oh
What?
God.
Yeah,
You know, Timberwolf used to be one of my favorite characters. And ever since Ayla broke up with him, he's gotten more obnoxious to me over time. And and that could be a great character trait to pit him up against various other legionnaires. So from a storytelling standpoint, I think that's not too bad. But
mm,
just personally, from a character that I used to really like to now, I just can't stand this guy. I mean, uh, and what I don't, I guess what I don't, if we had seen them sparring before, that would make more sense. But he seems, and while we have seen that a little bit, but he kind of does it with everybody. But this interaction seems a bit more personal,
yeah.
and he just is really just a big dick in this scene, and challenging her and belittling her.
Yeah.
I that seems new to me. I mean, I could just be misremembering things.
She gets it a lot in these issues. And I think I
Mm-hmm.
remembered, or in this issue, I should say, I think I remember talking about like there was a scene in the previous Legion volume where Wildfire was really just laying on Dream Girl and, because of her power. But it's odd on two levels. We've seen how awesome Dream Girl has been in this volume. Both of
Mm-hmm.
us have been like, she has really been like an MVP character in this book. Um, she does something a little dirty in this issue,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
okay, that's
But
okay. To be
yeah, but that's good.
yeah.
I like that. I like that thing. We'll talk about that.
But the Timberwolf thing, I got to throw it back at Levitz. You're right. He had that thing with Ayla, but then he had that whole you have to do Karate Kid's will thing,
Right.
and
Yeah.
he had like kind of like a turnaround,
Mm-hmm.
and you thought, and then all of a sudden these past couple issues or whenever it's come up, he's back to form again. He's even worse than Wildfire,
Yes.
and um, I could excuse it if it was post funeral sadness,
Mm-hmm.
but again, no evidence to that whatsoever. You know,
Oh, I like that. I like that
right?
supposition.
I
Yeah.
would like if the team was kind of on edge a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them. and it will be a story point down the road. But like, I want to see, but there's no evidence of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like, even though he comes around later and says, "Well, if they do attack us again, Dream Girl will let us know." Like he does come around in the whatever page that is,
Yeah.
page 13. Um, and some of that is I don't know what it is. I don't know. I think it's sloppy, right? I wrote sloppy. I said
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
sloppy. That's sloppy characterization.
Well, and we also get in that first scene still, despite Timberwolf's somewhat aggressive approach to Dream Girl,
Hmm.
we get for the first time, right, since they broke up, we get a scene with the two characters together.
Yeah,
And Starboy is defending her as you would expect. I mean,
sure.
that makes sense, right? Just
Right.
even though they may not be together now, and whatever has happened between them, we get a much better scene regarding that later. But he's I have enough respect for Dreamy that if she foresaw my power being decisive in this count, oh yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah, we should just
I
talk about this too. So the whole
I'm not
reason
going to
why,
argue with her, is what he says.
yeah, the whole reason
Yeah.
why this argument kicks off is because Timberwolf is like, Dream Girl has this prediction that there's going to be an attack, um, and when that giant, uh, what's that toy that looks like it looks like this? It's a toy that has little spikes and it just sort of bounces
Oh
around
yeah,
on the
yeah,
floor
yeah.
like for a dog or something. That's what that ship looks like.
Yep.
It arrives and Starboy says, you were right. It's right where you predicted, even though they don't know why. But there's two parts of this premonition that they are going to get attacked or something, that an attack is going to happen, and that Starboy's power is going to be a decisive factor in this encounter. And that's the part that I'm like, oh, she totally made that up, right? Is that what we get out of that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's even, I don't know that it's in that later scene. I don't know that she totally admits it, but
Oh
it is
no.
heavily implied that she maybe, fibbed a little bit.
Right. I mean, look at page 13 where Starboy says, Timberwolf was right. I didn't do much. Did you just want
Mm-hmm.
to get me on this mission to talk? She didn't say anything, but look at her face. She's like,
Right.
she just goes right into what she really ultimately wants to say to Starboy. And
Yeah.
that's the part of it that I'm like, oh, because at first I was like, did she fake the whole thing? I was like, no, no, she didn't fake the whole thing. She
Mm-hmm.
did predict that. She totally wanted him to stay around. She
Mm-hmm.
manipulated that,
Oh
which
yeah,
I,
yeah.
which I'm like, okay, all right, girl, I'm fine with that,
Uh-huh.
because I think she's right on some level. Now you like this sequence, you like this whole Starboy Dream Girl thing. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, yes, and mostly for the fact that they we've known now for a while they're broken up, or they're taking a break, or however you want to whatever you want to call it, and we've not had them interact like this.
Hmm.
And so this is one of those things that's just been bugging me about these two characters, because I'm sure for the absence of any information. And so now we finally get a little bit. I'm they're Levitz and company are approaching that, and so like, oh, okay, finally we can. Here's one of those little minor mysteries that I've been interested in, and now we're getting a little bit more of it. Um, as you said, she sidesteps his question about the reason why he's there. You left without saying goodbye, Tom. You didn't give me a chance. And I haven't said a word to you while I was here for the funeral either, Nura. Oh, and just as a point of order, we were talking about, did they even mention it was Superboy's funeral? Yes, they did. I
Okay,
just noticed this as you were talking before. This is on page 2, and Element Lad mentions Superboy's funeral specifically.
great. Okay.
So yeah, we do get that. And this is going back to that scene with Starboy and Dream Girl.
Hmm.
Tom says, "You're a hard woman to turn away from," as he's uh, he's grabbed her arm, he's getting closer to her, and so I just having been in relationships where you may have broken up and you are tempted. I appreciated this scene. This makes sense to me. He's made a decision that's made clear here.
Mhm.
And yet obviously he still has feelings for her.
Right.
And he's having a hard time with that. And all she wants is for things to go back to the way they were, and uh, to reconcile and all that. And so from a soap opera type perspective, this is great. This is one of the strongest part of this issue, is that whole thing between them.
Then why does he leave?
Yes. Okay.
Explain the next scene then. Why does he leave?
So they are. So yeah, they go from that previous scene where he's kind of just getting close to her, and you're a hard woman to turn away from, and
And then he literally turns away from her.
but I was gonna say that they're kissing. You think, oh, okay, are they getting back together? But yeah, as you said, he does turn away from her. I was yeah he was as he's walking away. This is to me a weirdly constructed scene. It doesn't seem like you would turn and walk away as you're saying such things, but as he
Mm-hmm.
does this, I was only allowed to a brief leave from the Tribune, the Xanthu thing, whatever, for the funeral. I have to go back. Maybe it's better this way anyhow. So
What's the about face? I don't
yeah,
understand what the about face is.
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with
Okay.
you. It does seem weird, but I also understand it. I have been in a similar personal relationship ish situation like this. It's like it's so hard to not be with this person, but you have to be for whatever reason, right? I
Right.
I get that, but I also understand your objection to it, because just from a storytelling standpoint, it's like we're missing something. There's still an element here that's missing.
Yeah, and it's not even missing. It's missing in this issue, but it's not missing to us. If we want to put into if we want to go back to previous issues, Dream Girl was totally stepping out on him. Remember, there's
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
scene where Quizlet finds her at a club, snuggling up against some hairy-chested man,
Right.
and he's like, "Oh," and she's like, "Oop," and uh, some of that is, I think we factored it into, she probably had a premonition that Starboy was going to go to Xanthu, leave the Legionnaires. So
Oh,
maybe
right.
this was
Yes.
her way of kind of distancing
Mm-hmm.
herself to make the cut easy, right? To make the divide easy. But then, um, and then he does leave, and they end it quite quickly. Nothing really comes out of it. So does he know that she was doing that? Is that why he left? Like, I don't really understand. You're a hard woman to turn away from, but maybe it's better this way. Well, what's better this way? What's better for you? I don't understand why you're so against having this relationship. Did he learn about that stuff? And I can't remember if we've ever had a scene like that.
No, I don't think we have.
Okay.
But based on this, it implies to me very heavily that he did know, which made his decision. Well, he didn't really. I mean, I guess he could have fought it. I mean, going going
Fought
going to
for her.
Xanthu. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you left without saying goodbye, Tom. You didn't give me a chance. So given what you said about, that the her having this premonition, um, and distancing herself, and yet she strikes me as a person who wants her cake. Well, how's that phrase go? You want your cake and
That's
eat it
okay. Eat
too?
it too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
She's, we've said this before about her. She is all business and super right up front when it comes to being a legionnaire, to being a legionnaire leader, or someone who has the leader's ear. she is terrible when it comes to this relationship with Starboy. She doesn't know how to handle, it's almost like she doesn't know how to handle being a dream girl. Oh no, she doesn't know how to handle being his dream girl, even though she knows how to be a dream girl, meaning
Mm.
she can stand in the middle of the room. Like when they were during the Universal project, when they were when they escaped that planet, and she was like, the best way to be is right out in the open. Just be right out in the open. We'll blend in with everybody. She can be that way, right? She knows how to do that. She walks, when she's in the headquarters, she walks right through that Dungeons and Dragons game. She doesn't care. She's like, I'm Dream Girl. I do what I want. But yet she doesn't know how to be Starboy's Dream Girl.
Mm-hmm.
The girl that he fell in love with back in those old stories, if I remember right, and it's frustrating. And then I don't understand why. I don't understand his motivation. He doesn't come across well in this book at all. I think he hasn't really done much in this volume. We've talked about that before, except for that
Mm-hmm.
one issue featuring Starboy going to Xanthru. Um, why did I like this character so much? Why? Because he had the origin story in issue 306 or whatever that
Right.
was,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what does he do? He doesn't do anything. And then he has this thing here and he kind of slinkers away and he's like, yeah, maybe it's better this way. Maybe it's better this way. I'm gonna go to I don't, I agree with you. I really liked these scenes because we wanted them. We wanted these kind of. We always like when
Mm-hmm.
these scenes pop up.
Mm-hmm.
Usually Levitz does them really well, and I like the next scene because of it too. Um, I just want a little more.
Yeah.
I just want a little more.
Sure.
And Levitz is like, we don't got time for that. I don't got time for Starboy.
I got a gangster to plot.
Right.
As Before we get into that next scene, because this is another aspect of this book that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh, the pain, the melodrama,
Yeah.
but
Right. That's what you need. You need that in the Legion book,
yeah,
right? Like we
exactly.
love those moments in this book. Yeah, absolutely.
But what you just said, it kind of sparked a thought in my head. You mentioned, how much we've enjoyed Dream Girl. Lightning Lass has gotten her spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
Other female characters are
Shrinking Violet,
coming to the
Sensor Girl.
forefront.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's almost seems like this might be controversial. Levitt's doing that with the female characters, expanding on them, propping them up, doing more things with them, right? It almost seems like the inverse is he doesn't know what to do with the male characters. And so Starboy becomes the jilted lover trope
Hmm.
here. And I'm saying that in part because what we just said about Timberwolf, I think I'm erroneously making some sort of, like I said, inverse connection between how good we see the female character changes that he's been making, with how poorly the male characters are coming across.
Or by giving the female characters really strong personalities to individualize them, it goes to show you how the male characters are all cut from the same cloth.
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.
In all those previous Legionnaire stories.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're total. I mean, yeah, those old Legionnaire stories, they're totally interchangeable,
right?
Except for whatever their power set is, or
right.
The one thing that about them.
Yeah, they're used in stories for their powers, maybe for some connection to the villain, but ultimately, if a writer has to portray them some way, just like those early Sue Storm Fantastic Four stories where she's either fainting or everybody's worried that she's not going to be able to do anything, right? Like that's how it's shorthand to show this is what the boy characters do and this is what the girl characters do,
Mm-hmm.
And now here's Levitz saying this team wouldn't be anything without the girl characters because all the boy characters are dumb.
Maybe Starfinger should offer them a job.
There you go. So let's go to the next scene on page 19, which is great. So great.
One one page and you just get all of this characterization,
Right.
and
And
not just from Dream Girl.
oh no, furthers my point that the boy characters are dumb because Sunboy is such a jerk. I don't like him. So the aftermath of the Starboy Dream Girl thing is that Dream Girl bumps into Sunboy on a date with Laurel Kent, of all people.
Mm-hmm.
And he outwardly just says, oh, wow, a Starboy going home? I bet Laurel a Starstone clasp, but you couldn't hold on to him. He's
Oh
totally rubbing it in.
my God, what a jerk.
Especially Sunboy of all people, like, dude, you flip-flop girlfriends every second issue that we read. You're dating
Mm-hmm.
somebody new. Your track record is not one to be, glass house, stone throw, all that.
Yeah, but the difference is he doesn't seem to care about it. There's no depth to him in terms
No,
of
he
these
doesn't.
relationships.
He
So it's
doesn't
like
care.
whatever. I
Right,
couldn't hold on to Laurel. Whatever. Here's
right.
another one.
And Dream Girl's totally right. She's like, I didn't expect you to be sympathetic, but I would have appreciated it,
I mean, yeah, get if nothing else, these people have a relationship built on years of camaraderie and experience with their adventures.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I mean, you could always have a coworker that is just a jerk no matter what. But I would have appreciated. That makes sense to me. That makes
Sure.
total sense given the history. But then, and I love this, you know, she, instead of turning her ire on Sunboy, she just starts attacking Laurel. I was like, whoa. Let's see. Then again, when I see the company you're keeping, it only makes sense that you'd behave like an adolescent. Robbing the incubator, are we? And instead of focusing on Sunboy, it focuses that the next panel is on Laurel.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Just because I attended the Legion Academy doesn't mean I'm still a child, Dream Girl. I am older than I look. Sorry, dear. Perhaps you are over 12
Over
then.
12.
Oof. Ooh.
Is so okay. So my main question there is why does she go after Laurel, right? Is it because just the association? Laurel is being with the guy that she wants to be with at that moment, and she can't. It's I it,
I mean, it's a dig at Sunboy, but yet
it is.
but it really lands on Laurel, which
Yes,
is
I
which is kind of uh I think it's a first for Levitz in this entire run to put two females together like that, and
yeah. It was jarring to me.
yeah, it was a little,
Oh,
and also to show the other thing about it too is look at Sunboy. He doesn't care. He was the instigator of this whole thing, and then he doesn't say anything. He's like, all right, I'll just let them. What do I care?
yeah,
Again, he's not in the best light either.
yeah.
And is it more post funeral? In my head, I'm always like, everybody's just on edge.
Again, that would make a lot of sense if that were hinted at the very
Sure,
least.
right, but it's not.
I mean, beyond mentioning twice about the funeral from different characters.
Yeah,
And then I think, given what I know of what's coming up in the
yeah,
in the timeline, I'm older than I look from Laurel. It's like,
great
oh,
line.
this is setting up something, even if you don't realize it.
Yeah, that's a perfect line, which I'm sure I never would have gotten reading it originally, obviously,
Oh yeah,
but when we listeners were, we know something's coming. I think we're going to talk about a little bit next time around. That's a great line. And maybe it is Levitz he just needs to number one, he needs to throw this character back into our faces, Laurel Kent, because
mm,
he's like, okay, you need just keep her in the back of your mind.
hmm
Um, and it does bring up ages. What is the by the 30th century, what is the age of consent? The Legionnaires, you have to be under 18 to join, but that doesn't mean you leave when you are 18. So
hmm
there's minors on this team where you have some members that are probably in their early 20s. Like I would think some boy has to be at least in his early 20s by now.
I think the majority of these Legionnaires are,
Yeah.
if not
It-
older.
Yeah, except for maybe new characters like White Witch,
Yep.
Dawnstar, they might be younger.
Hmm.
So then what is Laurel Kent?
Yeah, yeah, this conversation certainly implies that she is younger than Sunboy. How
Right.
much is the really the question? It's like,
Yeah.
wow. Or she was just being totally, totally mean
Right.
for because she, what I really liked about this scene, despite the fact that she's attacking someone with no provocation. There's no reason for her to do this, right? Except that she's just angry at the situation with
Right.
Starboy, right?
Sure.
So that all makes sense to me.
Yeah. I love her for it though. There's very little that Dream Girl can do wrong that in my eye, I'm
Yep.
sort of
Yeah.
always rooting for her in this series.
Well, she has such personality
Yeah.
in this, whether you agree with what she's doing or not. The subterfuge with Starboy earlier, this scene, at least she has some personality, unlike Sunboy.
Yeah.
Since we're here, I want to make note of this. We get a quick two-panel thing between Wildfire and Quizlet.
Hmm.
And Quizlet's no time to talk. Quizlet has things to do, places to be. Bye bye. And then that's it. Um, but then later, and I wanted to ask you this specifically, when Wildfire is going up, about to blast that solar amplifier, and Sensor Girl's like, "Wait, no, don't do that." He says, "Okay, okay, just let me see," and then he goes, "Oh," and then we see him in the background. It looks like he's exploding.
Hmm.
It,
And it,
did you
and it,
did you take that to be that's part of the booby trap, or is there something else going on?
and then and even on the last panel in 26, when the satellite explodes, it kind of looks like Wildfire is caught in the explosion or just
Mm,
furthering that explosion. I couldn't tell you what the F that
yeah.
was. I really can't. I think the artwork is a poor, it's not helping me. Um, the only reason I even took notice that that was happening with Wildfire is because I read a synopsis of this issue after I got done reading it, and they said, "Oh, and then Wildfire explodes," and I went, "What? Where did he explode?" So I went back to the scene. I went, "Oh, he does explode. I think.
Mm-hmm.
What?
That
Why?"
it certainly suggests, yeah, exactly. So that was why I wanted to talk about, because I don't think it has anything to do with the booby trap. I think it has to do with whatever Quizlet is off doing.
Oh,
I
okay,
think there's a connection there. So that's my
okay.
prediction. So
All right, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
you're
He just got this new body and is like not doing anything. Everybody's sort of like chill with it. Nobody's, you know. I do find it interesting that Sensor Girl can affect his senses.
I was
It,
just going to say that too.
he
Yeah.
don't have senses,
Yeah.
right?
He's
Does
not
he?
human.
Yeah. She's powerful, man.
But that does beg the question, how does he see? How does Wildfire see, whether
That
he's in this new body or not?
maybe it is because of this new body. Like if there are eye implants,
Ah,
then maybe she knows where to target
okay.
whatever that means, and she can see things beyond the world of blah blah blah. So maybe if it was like him and an visor, it might have been a little different because the visor was more it wasn't like it was functional, right? Like it was just to give him a face, quote unquote, right? Now he actually has a face that she can target, I guess.
Yeah,
He's
maybe. I mean,
antimatter. I mean, how are we supposed to?
but she does, page, what was that? 27. It's almost like she hacks into Starfinger's surveillance equipment,
Yeah,
and she gives that little thing that I mentioned in the synopsis. I know you're listening. No one does this to the Legion,
yeah.
right? And so is just going back to what she does with Wildfire. It's just like, is this part of her ability that she can, through her, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it, but this is all sensory, and this is a monitor. It's very bizarre. So I don't, from a just a I always say this, but a storytelling standpoint, her issuing that challenge or warning, I should say, that's really cool. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
neat thing. But trying to understand how this all works is a whole other matter.
You know, She's got those. Again, you can do almost anything with her at this
Mm,
point
mm-hmm.
because she senses things. She senses the way the universe connects, right?
But
Um,
but but sensing and projecting, projecting, um, are different things to me. So yeah, it's just it's interesting.
yeah,
I won't say that's bad or anything, but
yeah, that word sensor can mean quite a lot. I really liked, and this is where the artwork, I wish the artwork was just stronger. I did like the attack on the headquarters because it gave us probably the first time ever that the damn thing moves and
mm,
moves out of range
mm-hmm.
of this attack. It's a little confusing once they move, that the the device still continues to fire. I'm assuming it's firing on the plaza, which explodes because it's probably not as shielded as the headquarters. Um, Somebody in one of the synopses was like, did it just fire back on the headquarters again? But no, it looks like the headquarters moved out of the way.
Yeah, it seems stationary.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a little confusing. But anyway, I thought it was really cool. It was like in another artist's hand, this might have been like really just so awesome to see this
Mm-hmm.
giant facility moving. It reminds me of like the first time I saw the saucer separate from the Enterprise, and you're like, what? You know, it's
Yeah,
cool. It's
yeah,
cool. It's a cool moment.
yeah. Those panels are, they're shapes. The top panel on page 24, you clearly see the Legion headquarters starting to move because they got that little
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
rocket blast on the bottom, right? It's being hit by the blast, and then it starts to become just shapes.
Right.
In the panels, you get this far away view of the Legion headquarters, and then this real close up of the Legion. I don't even know what that looks like. Oh, the Legion L on the side,
Mm-hmm.
and then we pan out a little bit more, and then close in on the beam hitting the plaza. I know it's just
Not the best choices.
no.
Yeah.
I think they could have done a
Yeah.
much better. But then you look at the next page and you got this. Well, the background looks really cool of space. I think that's the best part of this. I mean,
Hmm.
that the solar amplifier is just like generic concentric circles with a beam coming out of it. So
Yeah, I don't mind it too much, but
yeah,
yeah, I get your
it's all
point.
right. It's all
Yeah.
right.
It's inconsistent every time it's drawn.
Well, okay. So speaking of the drawing, I wanted to get your. We haven't even talked about the Thar stuff, um, but
Wait,
I think
what topic are you jumping to?
the Dan Jurgens part of this.
Oh, let me give one more thought about Sensor Girl real quick
Okay.
before we
Okay.
leave her. I'm sure you read this too. One of the letter column writers in that same issue about this issue describes her as a leader is not necessarily the person in office,
Mm-hmm.
and basically says, she should be Legion leader at some point. I think that's a really good description of who she is and what Levitz is able to do with her. Speaking of like this power set
Yep.
and how she comes across and how others react to her, like the way they react to her, like saying you and you. Like who did she say? Right? Like she's like, all right, I need you. Let's go. We need to go take care of this. Wildfire, Sunboy, Lightning Lass, come with me. Right behind you, Jackie. Like no question. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, yep, let's do it. So I think I just like that. I just wanted to keep pointing that out there. Like we've already talked so much about her. That letter writer saying, she's a leader without even being like that's such a on point thing, and we'll just see how all that turns out, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and since we're on that scene, point of order, I guess. So Sunboy followed Dream Girl back inside before they got started getting blasted because he's in the Legion headquarters and he just left.
Did he leave or was he coming back? I get.
I took that to mean they were just heading out.
Oh, okay, maybe, or maybe they're just taking a stroll.
That could be, but that still that would mean that they would have had to have come in pretty much right after her.
Right, because they threw the shields up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Don't go. Yeah, can't go too. Or Levitz. He's already trying to juggle too many things with this
Yeah,
issue.
that's very true.
So what about Thar? Let's go to Thar before we go
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
artwork.
yeah. Let's talk about Thar, and then I'll get to my. I love this because I think this is the first time we've seen his homeworld, right? Depicted.
I don't know that answer.
I think so. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find anything about it. So I assume so. But I love the world build, literal world building of this,
Yeah.
where Polar Boy's people develop their cooling powers because they were on this super hot planet, um, and and so they live underground. And going back to your short your short stocky comment earlier, right? It's like, well, if they live underground, they probably don't have a lot of, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense from an evolutionary standpoint, but um, it makes sense if they're short, if they live underground because they don't have high ceilings and all, that's kind of cool. And we really get to see the cooling mechanisms they have, which is the whole plot point of this, that Starfinger is doing his protection racket thing.
Sabotaging
Yeah,
and
sabotaging it. But you get White Witch, who's having a real difficult time with being in this hot planet, even though they are. Let's see. I don't know how far it is, but there's a scene on page 14, or a panel on page 14, where they're going down from the surface, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels, however deep that is, and it's still super hot for her, and she has a protection spell on.
yeah.
Mon-El, of course, it doesn't bother him. Dawnstar can survive in space without protection, so I assume that is the reason why. Yeah, I mean, I think she does say. I think at one point she does say something about feeling uncomfortable, or maybe I'm confusing her with somebody else, but she's not reacting the same way, right? So
Right.
I thought that was like I said, a great way to depict Polar Boy's planet.
And he says it's 97 centigrade, which is 206 Fahrenheit.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Holy moly!
So
Yeah, I knew it was high. I just didn't realize it was that high.
yeah, that's hot. And then Levitz does say in that letter column, apparently there's a White Witch story concerning what's been going on with her. So, because I thought it was odd that we've seen her now in two environments where she has to throw up some kind of protection spell.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really didn't get much more out of it. And then I read that letter column. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess if you're going to do something with her, I guess that makes sense because you really haven't done much with her other than, you know, using her as a sort of member of an away mission here and
Mm-hmm.
there. And, Dawnstar's like, hey, maybe you should go back to the ship or go home.
Well, doesn't that call into question Polar Boy's leadership qualities? Why bring someone who has to use a spell of protection like that and is still hugely uncomfortable?
Well, I mean, you would hope she would. I think you would hope she'd be up to the task. She's a Legionnaire, like when
Sure.
does she own, like, I would be at this point like, girl, I'm tired of you not preparing. Like, come on. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
hard,
You're
you
right.
know?
You're right.
Yeah.
But again, what skill set, what abilities does she bring to this mission?
Yeah.
I mean, Mon-El is obvious. I also question Dawnstar. What is Dawnstar doing there? It, if if it's just choosing Legionnaires that you think that would be comfortable in this environment, okay, that I guess that kind of makes sense. And obviously, White Witch is not up to the task,
Yeah.
despite what
Yeah.
Polar Boy may have thought.
Well, who else? I mean, you can't have Ultra Boy because if he switches to invulnerability, that's it. That's all he can do
Mm.
because he's got to stay invulnerable to the heat. He can't do
Mm-hmm.
anything else. You know, does Block get affected by heat? We don't know. So maybe Wildfire would have been a better choice. I
That's
mean,
what I was
it's
thinking.
in his
Yeah,
name.
Sun Boy, Sun Boy
Sun
too,
Boy.
but he
Right.
was needed elsewhere.
All right, so I get your point. I can see your point. I do love. Did you love the little joke, whether it was a joke or not, when the cooling system goes down, and Polar Boy's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to be a
Yeah.
substitute cooling system. Haha.
Yes. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, whatever.
So wait, do I take it you didn't particularly care for the Thar scenes?
Oh, they're fine.
Okay.
It was just a way to showcase Starfinger's reach. But
Hmm.
then I go back to what I said earlier, like you don't go attacking the Legion leader's home. That's just
Yeah.
dumb.
Yeah.
It's just really dumb. It's Levitz wanting to show us his hometown. He
Hmm.
just became leader. Let's explore him a little bit. We got to explore him as a leader. We got to explore the character more than what he's been given. I do like that. I like that Kark, the science police officer, freaked out when Monel was using his heat vision. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
funny.
That's a nice
Like,
touch. Yeah.
no more heat.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so it serves a couple purposes, but I don't think it added much to the story. So I sort
Hmm.
of was just reading through it, and I was like, okay,
Yeah. Sure.
that's it.
Okay. So, but these are drawn by Dan Jurgens, right? The
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 Thar
Thar
scenes?
scene. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Are they?
I it seems like it to me.
Okay.
I can see because when I saw that it was Dan Jurgens also doing pencils, I'm like, what? And so I because I didn't I think I noticed like a change in the construction of
Mm-hmm.
the like
Mm-hmm.
the faces in particular,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't really register until I was rereading the issue, taking my notes, and it's like, oh yeah, I totally see a difference here. And I can somewhat see Dan Jurgens' pencils, his style in some of this stuff. But DeCarlo and Starr do a great job of the continuity between the two. So it's not as perhaps as noticeable as you might think.
Yeah, I can see that now, especially because a lot of these characters kind of break the panel, and that is such a Jurgens thing.
Mm,
So like on page 7, where Monel is breaking the first and second panel, on page 8, Polar Boy is breaking the panel there on the fourth one, the borders. He's breaking the board, and so is the science police officer. That does really feel like a Jurgens thing more than a LaRocque thing.
hmm.
Because all of LaRocque's artwork, like I'm just take a quick peek, it looks like it's all, except for a few scenes, it's all entrapped within the panels. There's very little break. But
Hmm.
yeah, you might be right. I think you're right. I think the inking is so strong that
Yeah.
I cannot tell the one from the other, which you're right. Okay, that's good. Part of me is like that's bad, but that's also good, I guess, if you want consistency. So, yeah, I think that's a good observation.
So besides like you mentioned the panel breaking, what do you did you get any kind of if you're going to compare the two sets of page and panel construction and storytelling, uh, is there any major differences that you would, and I'm not saying that there are, I'm just curious if you picked up on anything in terms of these particular scenes, given that they were um, as I think they were drawn by two different people.
Yeah, no, I really didn't. I'm telling you, like when I went through it first and second time, I was like trying to look for where Jurgens was, and I was like, I couldn't tell you. No, I think the artwork is very consistent.
Hmm.
I don't think it, whether that's because that's what Jurgens was like, or he's getting a feel for LaRocque and trying not to go too far out of the mark
Hmm.
from it,
Hmm.
Yeah, I
I
think
would
it's
think so.
consistent.
I would
Yeah,
think that'd be what they would want to do, even from an editorial standpoint.
sure,
Don't
sure.
don't make it too different. And just a cute little thing on page 8, did you notice that they have a comic book shop,
Yeah,
Comic City?
Comic City.
I tried to read what's in those posters on there on the storefront there, but I can't make
Yeah.
that out.
Maybe because LaRocque did the annual, they needed a little help for this issue.
But curious that it's Dan Jurgens, because he doesn't. I mean, other than appearances, Legion appearances, maybe that's why. Because they had the Legion appearance in the Booster Gold title. Um, maybe he wanted to do more. They asked. I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious as to how Dan Jurgens got involved in this particular issue.
Levitz was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, remember that favor? You know, he did also pencil a bunch of the Tales of Legion,
Oh,
the Exile story, 321, 322, 323, 324, 325.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow, I totally forgotten
320.
that.
Yeah, so he's the Magpie issue, which I really like.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, then that totally makes sense as to why.
Yeah, so he's familiar with the characters. So here's what I think we should do. So we're done with this issue, yes?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. So next issue, when we read 41, that'll answer a lot of our questions and maybe support some of the things we said here. Maybe it'll like us Starfinger. Maybe it'll make us like Starfinger. Maybe it won't. I think what we should do for next, knowing that next episode is probably going to be busy. I don't know if you noticed in the notes I updated the notes for what's coming up for next issue. There's a lot of extraneous issues we're going to have to read as well.
Mm.
I think we should watch the Legion of Superheroes episode with Starfinger that features the Substitute heroes. Did you ever see that episode? The animated Legion animated series?
I don't remember. I don't recall that at all. So
Yeah,
I don't think so. No.
there's a Legion of Substitute centric episode featuring Starfinger
Okay.
that is probably one of my favorite episodes of the
Oh,
entire run. Yeah.
is it this version of Starfinger?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that totally makes sense because he's the more visually interesting looking
Yeah.
of the two versions of Starfinger.
So if you watch it, as I said, we have a lot on our plate for next issue, which you're probably like, what? We do? It's like, yeah, we kind of do. If we want to throw it in there just for 5 minutes just to talk about it, I think it could be fun to
All right.
put it in there. So,
Yeah.
all right, we'll do that for next time around.
Okay. So now that we're done with that, I was going to try to insert a star pun somehow in, but forget it. In other
Stellar,
words,
that
stellar. That
stellar
was see
issue.
this is why you're so good at this. Yeah, the stellar issue. Uh, we're going to move on to some related issues that came out at the same time
Mm-hmm.
as this issue, and the first up is the Who's Who Update 87, issue number 4 for some Legion entries. And I wanted to start off by asking Peter if he noticed the Atmos connection in this issue.
I did not. Atmos connection. Wait.
and to be quite fair, Peter, I only noticed this because I was just kind of flipping through the issue while because we have to take so the listeners know this behind the scenes curtain or behind the curtain kind of stuff. We have to take breaks occasionally so that the recording that we're doing, Peter has to make sure that it doesn't go too long, right? Because the Zoom recording.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was flipping through this, and I was reading the letter in the letters column on the inside cover. There's a question about Atmos from Delmo. Is there any reason why part of his torso is missing? Is the question.
Mm-hmm.
And then the answer from I assume the editor here, Bob Greenberger, is, let's see here. Yes, Atmos is missing parts of himself, and there will be details revealed about him around Legion of Superheroes number 40.
Oops.
Oops, yes. Well, to be fair, he did say around.
Okay. Okay.
I just thought that was fascinating. I had not noticed that before. So, but we do have actual entries in this issue with Mantella and Monel.
Yeah. I usually always read the letter column. That I missed that is very bad. Because look, here's another letter writer talking about errors in previous entries and says at the end, as shown in the recent Legion Superman action story, which we just read,
right,
not so long ago, the Earth One continuity still exists in an alternate reality. To which Bob Greenberger says, the Earth One continuity is not the one that exists in that never to be seen again pocket universe. Superboy died. If so, then Supergirl never came to Earth to meet Superman, and there was no Superman Batman team. We also saw Krypto lose his powers decades prior to any other version. Nope, it ain't Earth 1, and it ain't gonna be seen again.
Ooh, ooh.
I agree. It's not Earth 1. See, that goes to
Right.
show
Yep.
that many people still just sort of assumed that the Pocket Universe was Earth 1, and while it was clipped from a momentary part of time, it totally got changed.
Hmm.
And Time Trapper even said, what did he say? Didn't he clip it from the Byrne universe, right? But then, because we were post crisis by then, but because of his machinations, it turned it into a,
Right.
you know,
Yes. Yes. I mean, that was in the
it was in,
action
yeah,
issue.
one of the action or Superman chapters.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Um. Yeah. That's, I think, quite. I mean, obviously. Well, I mean, the letter writer did say they read that, so it seems to me that's quite clearly spelled out that it's not the canonical Earth One.
So or maybe it's just that's how confusing everything was back then.
That's yeah, that's true.
So
Very
confusing.
true.
So anyway, okay, back to our Legion entries. Mentala and a revised entry for Monel.
Yeah.
Let's go with Mentalo. What did you
Mm.
learn?
Okay. Well, one, I found it. Well, who did the art for that one?
Steve Lytle.
Steve Lytle. Okay. I found it interesting that this character, while she did have, I'll just say, a few appearances across some issues, right? Um, Really, the only thing that she's known for is her sacrifice, her subterfuge, posing as a villain with the Fatal Five, the new Fatal Five.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we talked about this in which issue was that, Peter?
25, 26.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I never remember these things. But really, and she was killed, so she's known for her sacrifice, and she gets an entry here. So I guess that's worthy of inclusion in this. But the thing that was interesting to me was the mention of the diary that the Legionnaires found, where they find out all this apparently the details of what her plan was. Um, was there ever a mention of this diary in those issues?
I don't know where this information is coming from.
Okay, that's
Everybody is taking it as the only thing I can think is that it's the Who's Who entry
mhm.
giving us that information because
Yeah.
we still don't have the Who's Who in the Legion yet.
Mm.
The only other place it could be is if it's in one of the source books, which I think they said there's about two of them out by now.
Oh,
Those
okay.
role playing games,
Yeah.
you know, um, which I only have one of, and I didn't look through. So that's the only other place I could think that information exists. Because I went back and looked at some Bouncing Boy stuff, and I was like, what? Where's this coming from? Why? Unless we totally missed something, but I don't think we did.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's just
So
I guess that's an interesting point to these Who's Who entries, is that they do sometimes provide new information
right.
that we may not have gotten in the actual issues. But given that this is a deceased character, why? What does it matter that we know this? Is it just that whoever wrote this entry, who does write these entries?
It depends.
One
Yeah,
one of
sometimes.
one of
Yeah.
the writers that they list here, whoever
Yeah.
wrote this, I bet you I'm gonna. Oh no, I was gonna say Mark Wade, but he's not listed here. One of these guys was like, you know what? We didn't particularly resolve the backstory of this, so I'll just toss this in here.
Maybe because it was a character that was created by Lytle, maybe in his notes, maybe there were notes
Mm.
provided, and maybe that was just a point that just never got into the actual story.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Levitz wasn't able to put it somewhere. So, well, it says Paul Levitz, contributing writer. So
Okay.
maybe he did it himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was really all I took out of that as well.
Okay.
It's a fine image. It's Steve Lytle. It's great. It
Yeah.
shows It probably is all supposed to look like his wife. Um, the costume, obviously reflective of Saturn, is all stuff we've talked about before
Yeah.
during her appearances. There
You know,
wasn't
it,
much more.
it does make me kind of regret that they didn't use her more. It's a nice, it would have been an interesting character to explore a little bit.
Yeah. But between Saturn Girl, Tellus, and Sensor Girl, it's like we can't take
Yeah.
another one.
No, no.
I did like in the powers, Mentala possessed a degree of mental power as is common on Saturn's satellite world. And I know that, Titan is a moon of Saturn. I get that.
Hmm.
And I think at some point Saturn Girl was from Saturn in the early days as opposed to Titan, I think. Can't
Yeah.
remember.
I can't recall either.
Um, but I kind of like that, because there's sometimes confusion between Saturn and Titan, they're just basically wrapping it all in one. Saturn's satellite world. Yes, it's Titan,
Why?
but
But why not just say Titan?
I guess because of the Saturn connection, you know what I mean? Because Titan, because then you would
Yeah.
have to
Oh,
say
sure.
Titan,
What's Titan?
Saturn's,
Yeah.
yeah, what's Titan?
You'd have to know that. That's true.
Right. And she, it does say earlier that she's a native Titan.
Hmm. Monel.
Monel.
So this is, they wrap in the post crisis, post pocket universe type history to Monel. The only really interesting thing to me about this was this little line: the Phantom Zone bridged the gap between those uh, universes or whatever.
Right.
So okay, so that opens up a whole can of worms to me. Does that mean that the prisoners in the Phantom Zone, were they the Pocket Universe Kryptonians and Mon-El? Were there two different versions of the Pocket? Sorry, the jailed Kryptonians. I This seems to me messes up the what they were trying to clean up with between Crisis and the Pocket Universe and all this stuff. It's like, what are they doing?
Yeah. And we're gonna get a story with the Phantom Zone and the Pocket Universe version of Phantom Zoners in that John Byrne Supergirl story
Mm-hmm.
coming
Mm-hmm.
up. So it
Yeah.
might answer
That
that
and
question.
yeah, well, and that's what made me think of that. It's like, well, I know that story, and obviously, as we said earlier, of course we'll see that Pocket Universe again. Um, but yeah, now I actually want to go back and take a look at that storyline and see if there's any what kind of connections there are. But this
Yeah.
because this just muddying the waters to me.
Right. I mean, if this is Levitt's writing it, it can't be that way
Yeah,
because this is why Mon-El needed to have a total revamp in his origin story too, because you can have the Phantom Zone. It doesn't make sense for Superboy to inject him into a Phantom Zone that is also connected. Time Trapper, you would think he'd be a little better at that. It just doesn't make sense though. It's like
yeah.
it can't be.
So that means that the bridging the gap thing that's got to be some weird obtuse way of making sense of that, but it doesn't to me.
For now, right? Because they
Yeah,
have no other
that's
answers.
true. Yeah.
And they don't know, even
It's
though
so
in the opening letter column they said the Pocket Universe is never going to be seen again. It's not true. So it's like they don't even messy post-crisis DC universe.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, and this is what's kind of fun looking back on it all these many years. It's like,
That's true.
oh, nobody knows the answers. They're making it up as they go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because this revised entry, really is a revised entry. It's basically almost. I'm looking at the first Mon-El entry from way back, which was also drawn by Steve Lightle. It's basically word for word, except for these interjections
Mm-hmm.
about the
Mm-hmm.
other universe. So
Well,
Yeah,
you said Steve Lytle, but this is the revised one is done by Chuck
I
Patton.
meant the original one was by
Oh,
Steve
okay,
Lytle. Yeah.
okay.
So yeah, this by Chuck Patton, who I really, 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 really like, and Robert Campanella.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the entry's fine. I mean, it's he kind of looks like an older Mon-El.
Mm.
I don't know why Chuck Patton would be used, but okay. But I do like Chuck Patton. I still follow
Yeah,
his Twitter
yeah.
and his Instagram, and he has some great artwork still.
The other thing I wanted to just, uh, not that people can't do more than one thing, but they make, yeah, I think in that original entry they noted his expertise in what was it? Oh gosh, bio something,
Hmm.
biotechnology or something like that.
Biotechnology, engineering.
Yeah, but he's also an astronaut because that's going off into space is what led him to Earth, right, and encountering Superboy. So this guy is if he's an astronaut and a biotechnician and all the he's quite a Renaissance Daxamite.
And he's still an astronaut. I mean, there's several times where he, in this volume of Legion of Superheroes, where he talks about him and Shady are out exploring the edges of the
Mm-hmm.
universe, which is
Mm-hmm.
great.
Yeah, I always wanted mm, uh, for them to explore that more. There
Yeah.
could have been so many possible um, stories featuring those two off on some alien world and having some adventure, and they never. I don't think they really ever did anything with that,
Yeah.
as I recall.
And the Valor series is that's so many years later. It's a totally different character and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't ring the same. On the cover for this issue of Who's Who Update 87, number 4, you can see Mon-El up top flying on the front cover and Mentala on the back cover fighting a Booster Gold villain named Mind Dancer, which makes
Mm-hmm.
sense since they're both mental based characters. A cover
Mm-hmm.
drawn by Todd McFarlane.
Todd McFarlane, yeah. Which of course, you mentioned the Mon-El on there on the front cover, but his cape extends way past his feet onto the back cover, which
Of
that's
course.
that's a McFarlane specialty.
Okay, let's go to the issue that I've been waiting for
Oh
all
yeah.
recording. We decided to throw in the Amethyst miniseries. This is the third volume. She had a 12-issue maxi series, then she had a 16-issue series, and now a 4-issue series plotted by Keith Giffen with scripter Mindy Newell, no stranger to our conversations. Last time we talked about Mindy was Legionnaires 3, I guess.
Mm,
Right?
okay, yeah, that sounds right.
Um, artwork by Esteban Maroto. And we have John Costanza on letters, Tatiana Wood on colors, Karen Berger, editor. We decided to throw this in because, as you'll hear in the story, this has a Legion connection. So we are going to take a look at this issue, this series, 4-issue series, as part of this secondary segment where we bounce around the larger DC universe of 1987 or whatever month and year it is. So, Amethyst number 1. My personal favorite of the 80s, one of my favorites of the 80s, so fond of it. So I know you're going to have all gushing things to say. Otherwise, we are ending the podcast right here. No, just kidding.
Well, it's funny because Peter asked me as we were chatting back and forth preparing for this episode. I think he asked me what I initially thought of this, and I maybe wasn't as positive as I am now about the issue. Um, but I was very interested in some aspects of this issue, specifically to ask you some questions about this, Peter, because I
Yeah,
don't have the same history with the character of Amethyst.
right.
I read the preview that appeared in Legion of Superheroes number 298.
Mm-hmm.
Did not read the original two series that you just mentioned at all. It's been something that I've always wanted to get back to, especially because I know you appreciate it so much. Um, Before this, reading this first issue of this miniseries, which, as we said earlier, is you could I guess you could consider it the third volume of Amethyst. I read her appearances in the Flashpoint Secret Seven miniseries, the Justice League New 52 Justice League Dark appearances. There was a New 52 anthology series called Sword of Sorcery that she
Mm-hmm.
had a story in, which actually I remember really liking
Mm-hmm.
that story. And then she also appeared in the Young Justice Wonder Comics title by Bendis and whoever the artists were. And I have the Amy Reeder Wonder Comics miniseries.
Right.
I haven't read it yet. So, except for that first preview or that first appearance in that preview in Legion 298, everything I've read up to this point has been rebooted versions of that character.
Right.
So, this is really my first main exposure to the
Yeah.
character, which isn't that much because she really barely appears as a character in this issue. So
Yeah. And to be fair, this miniseries is also a departure from what she quote unquote normally is.
mm-hmm.
I would say the Secret Seven, Flashpoint Secret Seven is from what I remember, fairly similar to what she is in like the first Maxi series. I don't think I read the Justice League Dark ones just yet, but this one is because this story is meant to take place several years. It doesn't mention it, but it is several years after the series ended. So it's kind of like a whole new era for the
Yeah,
character, for all
I
the
thought
characters.
didn't they say it was like 20 years later or something like that, or did I
Was
get
it?
that
Okay.
did I get that from some synopsis or something?
Maybe, yeah. I
But
didn't take
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna. I didn't take heavy notes on this one. I just
Okay.
sort of took surfacey notes.
Yeah, yeah. I will say I loved the Esteban Maroto
Oh
art.
God.
It's so good.
I mean,
And
it's almost too good for comics, right? But that's what he is.
yeah, yeah. In fact, so I read this. I'm like, oh, this is. I do have my initial reaction as I mentioned earlier when Peter and I were texting back and forth was tainted by some aspect of the story later in the issue. But I was immediately drawn in because of the art,
Hmm.
and we could talk about the particulars here in a minute. But so because of that, I immediately pulled up my comic book database and searched for Moroto's name to see, well, what else do I have that I may have forgotten about. And I only have, unfortunately, I only have. Uh, he did a couple of entries in the '90s Who's Who, the loose leaf format
Hmm. Hmm.
Who's Who. So he did the Atlantis and curiously enough, the White Witch Misa in
Hmm.
for that version of the Legion, right?
Hmm.
So that's it. And I feel kind of robbed because I want to read more. He also did the 19 so he did okay so he was an established artist. He did
Oh
stuff
yeah,
in Madrid in the 1960s. In the 70s and 80s he drew stories for Creepy, Vampirella, and Eerie, and other things.
Marvel. Yeah,
Marvel, Conan, Red
magazines.
Sonja,
Yeah.
Dracula. In fact, I don't know if this is true, Peter, because I pulled this up Wikipedia. He supposedly or reportedly designed the metal bikini look for Red Sonja. Had no idea. But then in the 1990 and 93, respectively, he did the Atlantis Chronicles, which makes sense for the Atlantis entry.
Hmm.
And then the Zatanna miniseries, the 93 Zatanna. I had no idea. So now I got to go. Well, first I got to go see if they're on the app. If they're not, I may have to go buy those issues because
Yeah,
I want to see more of his art.
I think I wrote here. I think Atlantis Chronicles is on the app. I think Zatanna. They only have one issue of
What?
Zatanna on the app, which is weird.
That's
I've never read that miniseries actually, but the
uh,
Atlantis Chronicles is just if you love the Peter David Aquaman series, you have to read Atlantis Chronicles because he pulls from that
Mm.
constantly.
Hmm.
And it really is just a fantastic, different kind of book. It really is, I guess, in a way, what James Gunn wants to do with Wonder Woman, with the Paradise Lost TV series.
Ah,
That's
okay.
kind of what Atlantis Chronicles is. It's exactly that. It's the Chronicles of Atlantis that leads you from the very origin to Aquaman,
Hmm.
and it sets up a lot of the story points in Aquaman, and also in with the character of Aqualad, Tempest, et cetera, et cetera. And the Esteban Marotta artwork is just, it's so good. So good. So I think I came to his artwork from Amethyst, but then I followed it with Atlantis Chronicles and just really loved that series.
And you were getting those as they were being published, right?
I was getting Amethyst at the time, Atlantis Chronicles, because that came out in 1990. I had to pick up as back issues. I wasn't
Oh,
collecting.
okay. Mm.
Uh, I was just getting back into comics at the end of 90, beginning of 91. So,
And we're gushing over Moroto's art, but without the Woods coloring, that those two together are just it. It really sold this issue to me.
yeah. And while it's very fanciful, and it's got trappings of mythology and all that kind of stuff to it in terms of the artwork, good and evil, fairies. Um, when you look back at the Ernie Cologne artwork, you can see that to- it's a departure in style, but it's not necessarily a departure in the visual language of and the makeup of like Gem World,
Hmm.
faces on trees, strange creatures that sort of look like a rabbit, but not really. I mean, that's stuff that Ernie Cologne was also doing in that
Okay.
original series.
All right.
It was meant to be a world, not to be too gender specific with it, but it's meant to be a world that a girl would think of. That was the whole premise of Amethyst, was that it was supposed to be a girl fantasy, right? So I feel like Esteban Maroto is just taking that further and just making it. Um, there's elements of fantasy. The language, the costuming is very much. It feels very Shakespeare. It feels very Tempest from
I was
Shakespeare.
I was gonna say a bit more of a high fantasy
Right.
aspect or style to it. Yeah.
With the language, because the language, they don't speak like this in the Amethyst miniseries,
Ah,
maxi
okay.
series. They don't have the these and the thous and all of that.
Who
Um,
who was the writer on the original?
Dan Mishkin and Gary Cohn,
Okay.
who also did Blue Devil and a bunch of other things.
Yeah. As an example of the diction here, on page 4, it's the white haired guy. I assume this character is also from the original
He's from
series.
the second series,
Sick.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
White Opal.
Okay. Good morrow, my lady, and how dost thee fare this day? Yeah. So there. Yeah, that could be a mouthful.
Yeah, I got such a Shakespeare vibe on it. And it
Yeah.
actually, it's not terribly off. Like, it doesn't feel like, it's not when Claremont tries to do a little bit of German for Nightcrawler and you're just like, ooh, that's terrible. Like it feels like it's like, I didn't find it too clunky. Like, as I was reading it, sometimes, especially me being an actor, sometimes I think of these in terms of like, if you really had to say it, does it make sense? And it comes across fairly evenly, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It also gives it a strange sort of sense of like melancholy and sadness. This is a world that's just not, I don't think, like I don't rush to go, I want to live in this world.
No. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Whereas I think in the original series, I was like, oh, this is such a cool place. Monsters and magic and gemstones and zodiac, like I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's well, I'll give a brief synopsis of this, and then we can go to the Legion connection, and then we can go to the any other things you want to with it.
All right.
So, we are here on Gem World, as you mentioned. This character of White Opal, we'll learn his name later on. He's kind of a gardener, And in the middle of his garden, he is the caretaker of this purple transparent statue that he calls Milady. And if you know who it is, you know that's Amethyst. If you don't, you just assume it's some some statuary. Along come these two young boys. They see the statue, which leads to the explanation of who this is. It's Amethyst, Princess of Gemworld. She's a legend. She's a myth. At this time, nobody knows if she's real or not, except for maybe the older people. And that she's also, she's the last of her royal bloodline, but that she's also mixed in with the whole Lords of Order and Chaos, which is a Dr. Fate thing, which is a Keith Giffen thing, since he is the plotter, and which is an Amethyst thing as of the Crisis. So at the end of her second series, Giffen took over a couple of those issues, and I do believe they're on the app if you ever want to read them. And he totally changed the origin of her character. The origin is actually the same, it's just the reasons behind her origin were changed. And her parents were actually, if not her parents, her father or mother, one of them was a Lord of Order, and she becomes embroiled in all of this. And these characters known as Child, that little Lord of Chaos orange hair guy, and the crystalline character at the end of this book, Flaw, right? I think that's his name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They are Lords of Chaos. They get involved in the later part of that second series when Giffen takes over. So her origins are kind of put into question here. We get a tour of Gemworld, which I love. And then out of nowhere, the Lords of Order attack this statuary. Amethyst revives. She gets revised. And we find out that she's not the only one getting attacked. One of the boys named Donald has a twin brother named Rin. They are the sons of Lord Topaz and Lady Turquoise. Rin is kind of an introvert. He's messing around with dark magics. He brings about Flaw. And Flaw's like, okay, you want power? You're going to get power. We're going to put our power and our energy into you because Amethyst is returning. And we're going to make you into the image of chaos. No longer will you be Rin. You will be known as Mordru. And there's your Legion connection. The origin, this becomes the origin of the Legion of Superheroes villain known as Mordru.
Okay, so again, bad memory. Has an Amethyst, or not even Amethyst, but Sorcerer's World, there's been a connection to Mordru via Sorcerer's World prior to this, right? Am I thinking of something that we've read out of the timeline?
No, we've seen it, right? He's in White Witch's Origin. He was one of the teachers there, and
yes, okay. And then is there a connection to Sorcerer's World, or between Sorcerer's World and Amethyst as we knew it before this issue, before this series? Okay, so this is the foundation of that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. This is just Levitt's Giffen. Because in Mordru's first appearance, right, he's like already locked up, right? He's like he's this, they call him the Dark Lord. He's this mage that nobody knows who his origin, I guess, beyond the White Witch stuff, right? We also don't know why he's so paranoid about being buried and why that takes away his powers. So he had a lot of what ifs. And then you think about, like, in that, he's also shown up when the Legion teamed up with the Legion of with the Justice League of America, right? Like, they went up against Mordru. Now, I never read that story, so I don't know if it took place in the future or in the present day. But if this is a character that can exist in both, then why? Why can he exist in both? And I guess this is part of they're going to give it a reason here.
Okay. I did read that story and I don't remember.
It's been
so long.
I'd have to look at it again for maybe next time around just to kind of see if he was in the present. Then again, it kind of makes sense that
Mm-hmm.
you would have to give this guy an origin that takes place in the present to affect the future.
Yeah, and I could totally see Giffen going, "Hey,
Uh,
this thing here, that thing there. Hey, we can build something out of this."
Giffen was such a major architect of the 80s DC. I mean,
Yeah.
he was, we tend to give it to Wolfman a lot, rightfully so. But Giffen, man, they gave him everything, especially if it dealt with Lords of Order. So, like
Mm-hmm.
Phantom Stranger, Dr. Fate, obviously, Amethyst, and there were a few other characters too. Like, he just was all about, like, I'm going to handle all that. Think of the Gray Man in the Justice League Wahaha era. He was a agent of Lord of Chaos. Um, Giffen was like sort of like your fix it person.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you wanted to do something a little different with your characters, let's get Giffen in there. He'll totally revamp. He revamped Amethyst. He revamped Ragman a little bit later in the early '90s. There was like a new miniseries that he had his hands in. So he was, yeah. This is why I'm such a big Giffen fan because
Mm-hmm.
he always did really interesting things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he wasn't just a, premier Legion artist.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, and obviously the architect of one of the architects of the 5 years later Legion.
yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, it's a simple story. I mean, it's not, I mean, does it give you, what did you think of like, the very little you get of the previous, you get that exposition flashback, but then you do get a tour of Gem World. What did you think of any of that?
well, the one of the things that I was impressed about this issue was the pacing. Not like I said, not. I mean, I have a basic understanding of who Amethyst is, but I don't know the details. I don't know what happened in those first two sets of issues series that preceded this, um, and yet this story, within 9 pages, what did I say in my notes? The pacing is fast. We get the introduction of some characters, the arrival of our point of view characters, the two archers, hunters, so that we have someone for, would you say his name when? White
White
Opal
Opal? Hmm.
gets to explain, and later Amethyst herself gets to explain to them and us what's going on, who's what. And then we also get the quick history of Amethyst, the transition to Child, which I didn't know who that was, because did they actually name that character? I mean,
He, in a sort of roundabout way.
oh
Yeah,
oh no, they do. Yeah, on
yeah,
page 7, Child. They talk about Child and Flaw. I guess I didn't when I first read this. I did not make that connection. When you turn the page, that's poor readership on me that I didn't make that connection to who that human looking character is on that sequence where we get introduced to Gem World. So
right.
you get all this stuff within 9 pages to set up the basic structure of where we are and to a large degree who these characters are, and then from 10 on the plot just starts moving to get things set up for what comes next. So I was really impressed with that. As far as far as like your specific question about Gem World, I thought it was cool the way that we get one panel per what realm, I guess,
Hmm.
is that their
Hmm.
correct term?
Hmm.
But man, the way Child talks about some of these, it really, you talked about before about the Shakespearean language, and Child just really pulls you out of it.
Oh yeah.
For example, um so we're talking about diamonds are forever, don't worry, that was only a movie.
Hmm.
And the Emerald City used to be run by a wizard, but now they've got a Politico with straw for brains. And then finally, um oh no, there's a Dune reference. uh
Hmm.
Opal, he's quoting a Springsteen song. Springsteen's a big hit in Opal, he even says. It's like, what? This is probably a bridge too far for me. But I also don't know is that indicative of child in previous appearances?
Yes, and I think it's also it's got that Giffen flavor to it as
Yeah, oh
well.
yeah, yeah.
The other thing, and that's not really told here, is the whole premise of Amethyst is she's a princess from Gemworld that gets sent to Earth. Earth runs slower time-wise than Gemworld does. So when she goes back to Gemworld, even though she's like a 13, 14-year-old girl on Earth, she's an adult on
That's right.
Gemworld.
Mm-hmm.
So if you kind of push the notion of, even though it's been 20 years after those events on Gemworld, Child very much still probably lives in the present day Earth feel, right? That's why he can spout all these
Mm.
present day things. And why it feels so alien probably to everybody else, because they're like, the Lords of Order exist in Earth terms, right? They're not a Gemworld creation. They just are a creation that is also messing around with Gemworld. So
Mm-hmm.
so they are in the present. The Gemworld, for lack of a better word, is kind of in the future. So that little mashup, yeah, is very dated and probably jarring, but it makes total sense on that level, whether
Mm-hmm.
the book describes that or not, which I don't think it ever does. It's sort of like that's one of the things I bring to it as a reader of previous stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But to that point, I never felt. I mean, other than specific, details, historical aspects of this, I never felt lost
Mm-hmm.
in what was going on. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward plot in terms of
Cool.
getting us from first page to the ending, right? So, I mean, I think very well done in terms of a first issue for this character.
Yeah.
And I get enough of the what came before type stuff. I mean, especially page 7, we get one. It's a little bit more than half of a page, but you basically get the whole situation with Amethyst. How many issues did you say the two series were?
12 issue maxi series and a 16 issue series with an annual and a special.
Okay, so 30 issues of information packed into one big panel. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some things you don't get in this first issue, which might come out in later issues. Like, one of the things I'll just tell you, because I don't think it's relevant to the story. So on page 7, Amethyst is battling that villain guy with the cape and the stripes. His name is Dark Opal.
Mm-hmm.
White Opal is his brother.
Okay.
So in the series, you realize that he has a brother. And of course, that comes with a lot of like, oh boy, because Dark Opal was the big bad.
Right.
Um, let's see. The only other thing that is, again, I don't think it won't spoil anything, but you might have gotten it. So when Amethyst wakes up and she knows immediately who these boys are, and she says, um, Donald says, "My father will never believe this. Look at her face." She says, "Lord Topaz will not doubt thee, Donald, nor will thy mother. Thou knows who I am and my mother." Lady, and then she says, Lady Turquoise, thy brother is Rin, thy sister Amber. But if you look at her face where she's like kind of turning away, she and Topaz, they had kind of a romantic connection in those early stories. But
Oh,
now
okay.
the father is married to somebody else. So that's why you get that look, like she's sort of turning away, like, "Oh yeah, I know who your father is."
and,
Um,
and so we didn't. That's not suggested or alluded to in that previous scene on page 16 with Lady Turquoise and Lord Topaz.
no, they don't really go into it, right? Like, I don't think there's anything in there that
Okay.
talks about like, um, Topaz he was kind of like a real just young, in the classic fairy tales, he was that young brash prince that didn't know what he wanted. He was so melodramatic, and then he was so in love. He was supposed to marry somebody else to try to put two kingdoms together, and Dark Opal was the one that wanted them to do it, but he didn't want to, and then that gets interrupted. Um, and then eventually he'd marry somebody else. So no,
Mm-hmm.
that relationship might come up later,
Mm-hmm.
but that's something that, again, like if you don't know it, it doesn't resonate. But as I read it, I'm like, oh God, tragedy, such drama.
And maybe that's why I was thinking, because I was as you were going through some things earlier, I was really looking for that 20-year reference. I couldn't find it, but if you if you given the history that you just described, and the age of Donald and
Right.
Rin, they, you know, late teens, maybe
Yeah,
20.
maybe.
So that makes sense. It's maybe 20 years. But the issue I have with that now is the idea, and Donald, I think, says it, or maybe it's his companion, um, referring to Amethyst as like a fairy tale, a story. That 20 years does not seem like long enough for a person who lived, even if you weren't born yet,
Right.
to reach that level of historical significance, I guess.
Yeah. It might be more than that if you think about it, because like if when the series ended, it wasn't like these characters. Topaz, I don't think was courting Turquoise just yet. Maybe he was. I don't remember, right? So maybe there's time there, and then by the time they get married, by the time they have kids, again, the gem world runs at a different time. So
Right.
but to your point, yeah, it doesn't feel so much unless it's just something that nobody talks about
Mm-hmm.
for 25 years. Nobody's like, we're not talking about it, because it caused it was such a time, the rise of Dark Opal, and then this whole Lord of Order thing. It was almost, the planet almost got destroyed. Gem World almost got destroyed. So maybe nobody wants to talk about it. I don't know. Yeah, you can't go too far away, but then because then it doesn't quite make sense. But
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to think of that 20-year where that come from, because it could feel like it's more, especially for language to change by that point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, I wouldn't have. I mean, I guess if I really thought about it, I would have remembered that there was a difference in how they talked, from that preview. But I'm totally immersed in this world and the way that they're depicting it, though. So
Cool.
it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
What I did find jarring is that scene, and this is right after Amethyst is starting to awaken. We get Emmy, and that confused me because I knew that Amethyst, what was her name on Earth when
Amy
she
Winston.
Amy? Okay, so that's the reference that Emmy. That's the problem is you name a character, two characters, so with two similar names, similar sounding names. That I don't that to me that's not uh, a good thing. But
Mm-hmm.
um, so like I said, I knew that Amy was on Earth and she was Amethyst on Gemworld, and yet now we get this character Emmy on Earth and Amethyst is on Gemworld, and so I did not know who this was,
Right.
and that confused me. I thought, is this supposed to be Amethyst on Earth?
Mm.
But
Interesting.
she says Amy, but her name is Emmy, so I was all sorts of confused
What
going into
what
this.
what color is her gemstone?
Well, we do, yeah, we do see that on the next page, right? Because it's emerald, right? So
What's Emmy short for?
yeah,
Yeah, emerald. Yeah.
I'm but I'm just saying, when I first got to that
Yeah. Oh,
scene, I was
sure,
like,
sure. Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
where are we? Who is this? Are they the same character? Are they
Yeah.
different people? It does become clear.
Yeah.
But at first it's like, what the hell? And she sees, I don't know, it looks like a little alligator looking creature in the mirror, but it's not there. Or yeah, yeah. So it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah. That little creature actually shows up in the origin story for Amy as well.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so this character is a holdover from the series and the Maxi series. It's definitely Giffen calling back to to a character. She was one of the princesses of the Emerald location.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reference to her mother, she says, "I don't want to be like my mother." That's the character on that collage that looks like she has like green. She almost looks like a Hela character from Thor, or
Mm-hmm.
not really. That's her mother. Her mother gets possessed
Oh,
by
yeah.
this demon. She's the big bad of the second series. Um, and there was also a lot with Emerald in the first series. Like, Dark Opal was such a jerk. I think Emerald even like sacrificed one of her daughters to kind of just be like, you know, don't attack us. I will give you one of my daughters
Oh, God.
as an apprentice, but actually wind up sacrificing her. It's like a Sophie's Choice thing, I guess. Um, so there's a lot there. So yeah, that's a total holdover scene. I think it's probably to show time again because she was the youngest daughter and now she's
Oh, okay.
married, you know. We will see her again in this story. I think they just didn't want to leave for readers who read it before. They were like, yeah, she's still around. We're going to get to her, you
Okay.
know. But yeah,
So does that mean when she appears in Gemworld, she's going to be even older, or
she should.
or is that just an Amy Amethyst thing?
It might just be an Amy Amethyst thing now that I think about it. Although it did happen to, yeah, it also happened to one other character, but I think that's because he also was born on Earth. Because Emmy comes to our world and she's still the same age, I think. I'd have to go
Mm.
back. I don't know.
Mm.
I'd have to look.
Okay.
They run fast and loose with those rules.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And for readers too, like it does seem like a not a weird thing, but for Giffen to try to connect Mordru to this gem world thing, like it's like okay, you can see he could take advantage of certain story points, right? Like if I'm gonna come up with an origin for Mordru, this isn't a bad way. But then as you mentioned twice now, her preview was in an issue of Legion of Superheroes, so it's not that far of a stretch to kind of go, well, let me just okay. She invaded our book, so now we're gonna go invade her book.
Okay, so let's talk about Mordru,
Mm-hmm.
or Rin,
Rin.
as he's first introduced. So this is that whole sequence starting on page 17.
Yeah.
This is what I was alluding to in my initial reaction to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because this scene, I talked about the wonderful pacing and getting all this information up front, and then we get to this, and it's wait, how many pages is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of flaw, um, transforming Rin essentially, right? It just went on too long,
Oh.
and I don't feel like it could have been done in 2 pages,
Hmm.
3 pages at most, right? So it kind of soured me on the whole package, I guess, a little bit. Um, Regardless, this is what I really wanted to get into with you. I wanted to ask these questions. As an Amethyst fan, what does tying the Legion via Mordru here in Amethyst, what's that do for you? What's your reaction to that? What is it necessary? Is it does it increase the depth of lore, I guess, for lack of a better word? In DC Comics generally,
Right.
or yeah,
Right.
what do you think about that?
I thought it was cool for one because it tied two properties that I loved. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally biased, right? Because I was just like,
Sure.
ooh, that's just awesome. On some level, it could also be we are post-crisis. Giffen has already made the connection of the Lords in Order and Amethyst. That still doesn't necessarily tie her into the larger DC universe. Now we're going to connect a major villain. That means on some level, it's almost like maybe DC was like, well, we got to do something with Amethyst, but we don't want to do the fantasy tale that we told in the first 12 issues. What can we do that makes it viable, makes the property worthy to stick around, even if you want to
Mm-hmm.
say?
Mm-hmm.
maybe Levitz and Giffen are planting seeds for later Legion stories, which, you know, we're going to get there eventually, right? So I think it's a number of things. I think it could also be, sometimes these writers get a little, maybe they get a little too clever, right? And they make the
Mm,
too many connections, but I think this one actually is earned. Like I don't think it's so far off the mark to sort of suggest that Mordru is from an alternate dimension that we already know. Like, great. Instead of making up a new dimension because it's post crisis and you're not allowed to make up new things,
mm-hmm.
like, they're like, well, okay, well then, hmm, you're giving me an Amethyst book to write. Giffen loves the Legion. You know him. He gets very annoyed with like leftover stories, it seems like, or things that don't make sense to him, right? He's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm done with Mordru being this mage and nobody knows. You know what? If somebody's gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. Right. So it could be just as simple as that.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the things I did like about this transformation sequence, and maybe it's not told as well in the artwork, is that I feel like Flaw is doing more than just talking to him. He's beating him and he's changing him. Like he says to him, you wish to serve chaos, then you have to know pain. You have to know darkness. One must be reshaped. I mean, he's sculpting
Mm-hmm.
this character. So I think in a way it does make sense, to if it was a little bit if it was more brutal, but I don't think Esteban Maroto goes that. It's not Conan, right? So he's not gonna like chop him up and all that.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I agree. Given that perspective, that makes a lot of sense for the length of this scene.
Yeah.
I guess it's a lot of it's too late for words. Stripling. Flaw uses that, or yeah, Flaw uses that word quite a bit. You wish to serve chaos. To serve chaos, one must know pain. One must know dark. It's just kind of overwritten
Sure.
dialogue.
Sure.
But I know I like I said, I don't know this character. If that's how this character has been portrayed in the past, then that's good. That's great. But
I actually think he was much quieter before.
okay,
So I think this is like, we have Mindy Newell on dialogue and scripting too. Sometimes she can get. I think
yeah,
that Emmy scene has Mindy Newell all over it,
mm,
right? Like I feel like what we talked about during Legionnaires 3, like, you know, the husband like, I'm gonna throw away your pills, and she's like, I'm not my mother. Like the whole like that just feels very Mindy Newell based on some interviews we read with her and all that. Um, and I think that's what this is, this sort of high
mm,
concept.
yeah, yeah. It is. This feels like something that you would read or see like in a Lord of Rings type
Yeah, yeah,
or inspired type thing. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm not sure how the rest of the story turns out. I really don't remember the next couple issues. I mean, it might be just three more issues of just beating the same drum for all I know. But the artwork is more than enough for me to love it.
Do you, again, speaking of the artwork, do you feel like that it's done differently or somewhat less in the Flaw Mordru scene than other scenes?
I could see that, like he's because of the it's more action oriented for lack of a better word. And, I sort of think of like this was his chance to go almost like Steve Ditko, like just totally go
Mm,
against maybe your artwork but it's not.
mm-hmm,
It's not a lot of background. It's a lot of more focus on the main characters and the because every time you see Amethyst, you got butterflies, you got trees with faces smiling at her, you got caterpillars, you got nature, you got fluidity, language. It's beautiful, and then you get back to those things, which is supposed to take place like in a dungeon. Um, and I think that's probably why maybe it would have read a little better if it was just more violent,
mm.
you know.
I was just noticing on pages 22 and 23, there's a lot of sameness in the construction of the images.
Hmm.
With Rin getting slapped around and similar kind of poses and facial expressions and yeah.
Yeah. The other reason why I think I really liked this notion of, you know, taking this origin story, connecting DC properties, is because Giffen was also really good at, um, well, not just Giffen. So, do you remember the 1986 Aquaman 4-issue miniseries that he got that camouflage costuming
Hmm.
in? Okay,
Yeah.
so that was by Neil Posner, and Craig Hamilton was your artist. And in that miniseries, they really set the tone of how, in a lot of those like magical stories or mystical stories, especially concerning Atlantis, there's always the notion of two brothers. So you had Arion, Lord of Atlantis, versus his brother Garn Danuth. You have Aquaman versus his brother Ocean Master.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the Atlantis Chronicles, there's that touches on quite a number of times as well, like this theme of brothers, right? And I think that's what I like about this, although I don't remember how it plays out. But the notion that Rin and Donald are twins, they're total opposites. Um, One is going to evil, the other one is, you know, a blonde, good-looking guy. So it's like I don't know if they play up on this, but it was in my mind reading it at the time. You know, we just went through Arion and Garn. We just went through Aquaman and Ocean Master. And it's like, oh, some more brothers, twins. Are we going to get any? Is that going to be anything? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and not that Gemworld is related to Atlantis, but they are like Skartaris. They are these other dimensions or these other places that you can do sword and sorcery, you can do fantasy, you can do Lord of the Rings type stories. So I think that was another reason why I was like, ooh, you know, we got this other brother that's out chasing rabbits and not believing in fairy tales, and yet you got this brother who's completely involved in fairy tales and legends and dark magic, and it's just, and you got the parents who are just like, I don't know what to do with them, you know. Plus, you need a big bad because Gemworld hasn't had a big bad in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So does that mean? So I have to assume that Donald ends up dead or trapped, right? Because who's his 30th century equivalent? If so, Mordru survives into the 30th century
oh,
Earth, right? So
right.
that'll be
Yeah, I mean,
interesting
this,
to see how this plays out.
yeah, it'll play out probably the way you would think it would play out. There might be one or two surprises, but again, I just don't remember. I don't remember the majority of it. And what I do remember is that Amethyst is really sort of just the backdrop, even though it's her book. Uh, I think what happens is Giffen really is more interested in telling the Mordru story
Oh,
against all these characters of Gemworld.
oh, I don't
So
know that I like this idea.
yeah, I mean, she plays a part. It's not like she's totally devoid of
Mm-hmm.
you know, but even how this issue opens, it opens with White Opal, it opens with the brothers, you know, like I feel like he's not going to forget the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you may not, you know, you maybe may not like what she does by the end of it, you know, because everybody's a changing by this point. You know, nobody is who they were back in those days of love and magic and
Of your.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay. Well, I have to say I am even more intrigued now to read the remaining three issues to see how this plays out, and also to see how Mordru's origin story is fleshed out
sure.
as well,
Right. Right.
and also just to see more of Moroda's art.
Yep. And it will have a Legion connection beyond what we're talking about, but
Oh,
we won't get there for quite a while. So,
are you talking about in the Legion book
yep.
or? Okay, okay.
Yep. 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 One little thing, Emmy is in Hudson, New York, and it could possibly be where Hudson University is
Mm-hmm.
because Emeth's father worked at Hudson University,
Uh-huh.
and that's the college that Dick Grayson
Yeah, yeah,
went
that's
to.
right.
Yeah. Although it was in a different town, it was in New Carthage.
Oh,
So Maybe Hudson has a branch,
Mm.
you know, just like Penn State has branches all over the place. So, but just for anybody who, you know, wants to make that little connection.
Uh, I I meant to mention this at the very top of our discussion of Amethyst, because when we first started the Legion project, you talked a lot about the Baxter, what Baxter meant, right? We've referred to this as the Baxter run of Legion,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, with this issue with Amethyst #1, it's the new format
Yeah.
that we were getting around this time. Um, this is a I think this is you have to you probably know this more than I do. This is Mando stock or Mondo stock. I forget which one it is.
Mando. Mm-hmm.
So it's like in between newsprint and Baxter, as if I got that correct.
Right.
And so at the time of this publication, newsprint issues were going for about 75 cents each. This new format is $1.25, and I don't know what the page count difference was, if anything. And then like Legion issue 40, that's $1.75 for the Baxter stuff. So um, I don't know the whole history of the new format that DC was doing. I have several comics that were published in this what they were calling new format for some reason. Um, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this format as far as production quality or what they were trying to do with that?
I just think they were trying to get away from newsprint, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it was a way to put a bridge between what newsstand, like it would be interesting to know, like most of the Baxter books didn't wind up on newsstands. They were
Mm-hmm.
just for comic stores. But maybe this new format could be a bridge between both comic stores and newsstands. But by this time, comics were really just about ready to disappear from newsstands,
Yeah, there's no barcode on this
Right.
issue anywhere, so this has to have been um,
Yeah.
direct sales.
And some newsstands were, some new format titles were only $1. So like the Spectre
Oh, okay.
by Munch and Gene Colan, that first issue is $1. So the pricing was probably different depending on what the titles were.
Mm-hmm.
It just was, yeah, it was like sort of like an in between. I don't know if it necessarily meant anything. Maybe it was their way to try to do characters that aren't Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And probably
Like
wouldn't sell as well if they were Baxter printed.
maybe, yeah. And maybe the cost of Baxter was too much and they,
Mm.
because eventually Baxter would go away,
Mm-hmm.
or there would be some amalgamation of whatever, you know. Um, yeah, I don't know enough about new format. Maybe I'll look that up for next time around. It's also grainier, right? When you touch it, it's a little grainier, I think, than
Yeah.
Baxter.
Yeah.
Um, not as white.
But still wider than newsprint.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's partly the reason why I was so enamored with the coloring of this issue, because the colors just come across as so vibrant.
Right.
And part of that is Tatiana Wood's uh, uh, color choices, but it's helped by I think the paper stock for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to mention this because our friend George from Meanwhile at the Podcast tagged us on in a tweet where he was retweeting something from Tom Pyre. It's a panel from Adventure Comics 342 by Hamilton Swan and Moldoff, and it's just it's so silly, and George is basically asking what do we think about this, right? It's showing the Legionnaires kiss. Well, specifically, is that Lightning Lass or is that Light Lass? I can't remember what she looked like. Anyway, it's Ayla kissing Chameleon Boy, and Invisible Kid is there saying, "Come on and join us, Starboy," which is why I wanted to mention it because of the Starboy connection and this amorous hijinks. we're having the big computer decide who'd have the most fun kissing whom. It's a riot. And Starboy's walking off saying, "No, I'll see if the applicants for membership are here yet." So he's again walking away from from other people. So I just thought that was a cute little Silver Age Legion thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my response to this was that, oh, is the computer making them kiss, or is it analyzing? Are they kissing everybody to figure out who's the best, who'd have the most fun kissing whom? So that's just it's silly stuff. What do you have any thoughts about
No,
that panel?
just just shows the insanity of this franchise.
Yeah,
So written for kids, and that's why I can't get too deep into the lore of it. People know it so much more than I do at this point. And it's like, okay, but they were written to be just teen romance books on some
yeah,
level.
yeah.
Um,
I just have to wonder, was Chameleon Boy and Light Lass ever, was there anything ever else? I'm sure there wasn't, but it's kind of fun to think about. And
yeah.
you've got Shrinking Violet standing behind them. Element Lads look like he's tweaking the dials of the big computer. It's like, it's so insane. All right. I think that's everything
Yeah,
for this particular episode. Peter, is that right?
absolutely. Yep. Next time around, we know for sure we're definitely going to read Legion of Superheroes 41. We know we're going to read Amethyst 2.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to dip into some Who's Who, I'm sure, and there will be a few other surprises.
Oh, okay. We're not gonna announce them. All right. I
Do we
will have
know
to go.
Do you know what they are?
I did
You
not
don't
know.
know
I
what they
didn't
are.
know. So
Do you want to know what they are? Or do we want us to save it? If
no,
case people
no,
want to.
no. Let's leave them wanting more to find
Okay,
out more.
that's right. You got to return. All right. Where can they send you email?
You can send email to longboxreview@gmail.com. And how can they contact you, Peter?
Peter at thedailyrios.com.
Yeah, come back and join us for all that goodness and more, as Peter just said. And with that, long
Long
live
live
the
the
Legion
Legion
Project
Project
podcast.
Podcast.
Bye, Peter.
Yeah.